was almost awkward. Whoa,
Yeah.
hey guys, I just got an alert on my wristwatch saying that Weird Things is now live on Channel 1.
Whoa.
Have you downloaded the Diamond Club app yet?
No.
It's pretty great. It's pretty
Diamond Club app.
F-wording, G-wording, G-word.
Yeah. The
I don't want to Q-word this whole T-word, M-word, but you know, between you, me, and the X-word. Look, it's us.
I like the screen grab, like, of the discussion. You know, Missoula in there, and then, you know, Skills Get Death is the ultimate third party.
X-word.
Yep, that's what we sounded like.
I like the screen grab, like, of the discussion. You know, Missoula in there, and then, you know, Skills Get Death is the ultimate third party.
X-word.
It works!
I just want to be caught in that moment forever. It's
Our own
fine.
loop. Oh, that's right. We get a new Westworld tonight.
Oh, yeah. This is supposed to be another big one.
Bonnie and I got like in an argument where I'm like, no, you didn't, you know, it's like, did you miss last week? She's like, no, I watched it. I'm all caught up. I was like, no, but I remember watching it without you. She's like, no, but I totally watched it. I'm like, let me load it up. And I'm like, look, do you remember this? She's like, yes. And the person does the thing to the other person.
Yeah.
I was like, well, how do you know? When did you? And she was like, you were there. I was like, I remember watching it without you. And then she's like, that's right. You watched it without me. And then the next morning we watched it together, and you watched it a second time.
Oh, my God.
My mom, like, cannot remember movies she sees, and they'll go, like, they'd go to, like, you know, they'd be looking at Netflix or whatever, and Dad will be like, we saw that. Like, no, we didn't see that. Like, no, we saw it. No, we did not see that. And then, like, 10 minutes in, oh, we saw this. And it's like,
Bonnie today says people were talking to me about Vice News on HBO.
It's
Is
really
that
good.
is that something I should watch? Because people are saying nice things about it, and I'm like, I'm gonna pretend I didn't tell you that 2 years ago, and I'm gonna pretend earlier this year I didn't patiently show you excerpts from Vice News on HBO so that you would get the joke of drones on Documentary Now.
They have a new Vice show on HBO.
Oh, do they?
They have a nightly news show.
Oh, okay, all right.
That's
So
really
maybe
good.
that's the thing.
family and friends. Like, I've had that. Like, yeah, I said it so much to my dad. Like, well, you say, my dad says, well, you say a lot of things.
Yeah, and he's not wrong. That's the funny part. Is like, you can't expect me to care about your words the way you care about your words.
Apparently not.
Though I'll say that Vice News Nightly, or whatever it's actually called, is really good. It's a really interesting take on nightly news.
Drones.
So wait, they have that on HBO and not their own cable channel?
I don't know if it's on Viceland. It might not be.
I watched something on I watched their Jesus and Mero, their late night show.
Yeah, those guys are supposed to be funny.
They bleep the N-word.
Really?
Like, they have a show where Action Bronson smokes weed and watches a show on another cable channel, but they bleep the N-word with two very funny, urban black guys.
Oh, so it was those people using their word.
I mean, like that's it's part of the speech. What they're doing.
Is that more awkward? Less awkward? Trying to
What do
be
you mean,
sensitive is
those
more
people?
awkward.
I do not approve of this. Anybody listening to this in the future, after I make my political announcement, understand I do not approve of this.
Dude.
And by not approve, I mean anything you find objectionable, even the things out of my own mouth, I do not approve.
Well,
Man, I think it's going to be a good episode.
It's going to be all space, guys. A lot of space stuff going on.
Not all space, because I definitely have a pick that does not involve space.
Whoa.
Oh, do we still have that Goblin news that we didn't get to last week?
Oh, yeah. Maybe we could start with that. Let me pull that up here.
Oh, I thought that was like a soundboard
I
thing.
thought something really fucked up.
It's a new.
Hey, is there any place where I could get a real-time count on number of views on a YouTube channel? Because I'm refreshing on the dashboard and the subscribers is real time, but the number of views is not. And I seem to remember that on the dashboard it used to be, because remember we were able to hit refresh as we crossed 1 million. But that was the number of subscribers. Yeah,
right.
Never mind.
Because view count, they do the view
They do it like daily.
testing.
Yeah.
And they have to make sure they check each view. And
Well, I do believe today is the day
uh-oh.
that we hit our first 1 million views on the Modern Rogue.
Very cool.
And
Hey!
today's also the day that we'll hit 50,000 subscribers.
Nice.
In unrelated
Wow.
news, Bryce is going in for carpal tunnel syndrome for using the click button on his finger to view.
No, Friday's launch was the biggest.
Oh,
single day
jeez.
Views. What?
Oh, I have a goblin thing to lead with.
Okay.
Jesus.
The Deep Web episode
Yeah.
you're talking about?
Yeah, the Deep Web did really, really well.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what, I think I am being accepted by the subreddit /r/learn useless talents. Like every time I post something there, it seems to do really, really well very fast, which is
good.
exciting.
Yeah. All right, are we good to go?
Let's go.
We good to go? All right.
Oh,
Let's go,
I
let's
gotta
go,
find
let's
this,
go,
see if I
let's
can
go,
find it.
let's go.
It sounded like Andrew was saying no.
This album.
Well, there was another. Oh God, yeah.
And they're all 1 minute long.
God, that album, that Power Hour album is really good.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear you
Alex?
say that.
Yeah.
Well, because I don't
yeah.
know how elitist a musician you are, because I'm not talented, so I know that they're simple, they're tight, and each one is punchy in a different direction, and I think it's delightful and good.
Yeah,
But
it's
to
a
hear
lot
a
of fun.
musician say that, I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. I think it's really awesome. I don't know. I have like an affinity for short form music.
Yeah.
Mostly because in middle school, half of what I listened to was Dance Dance Revolution.
Yes.
So I'm used to.
You should hear his Guitar Hero set too.
Well, and plus, I think I have the same affinity from a different direction, where it's like I got really into Paul McCartney's post-Beatles career, and it's like the dude can't make a tune more than 90 seconds long, and so he just strings 4 of them into a row, and he's like, yeah, that's a song. It's called Band on the Run. I don't know. Who cares?
Yeah.
This is Admiral Halsey and Admiral whatever. Uncle Albert and Admiral Halsey. They're all in the same song together.
It's all one. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when he does try to make it all one song, you get like someone's knocking at the door, someone's ringing a bell 28 times. Yeah.
All right. You good, Andrew?
I'm delightful.
He's not just good,
Okay.
he's the best.
Great. All right. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. All right. Take it away in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Weird Things Podcast. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Brian Brushwood,
It's true.
Justin Robert Young.
Yo, everybody.
You know, guys, we've got a lot of space news I want to cover. There's some big stuff happening in space.
I don't believe it. I don't believe there's anything interesting happening in space. I certainly don't believe there's anything happening on rooftops.
Well, gentlemen, even more than that, Brian. I'm going to blow your mind, but you know what? Before we get to the future, we got to talk about goblins.
Yeah!
Oh, baby.
I got 2 bits of goblin news for you right now. One from last week and one is breaking goblin news. I'm going to cover the thing that I talked about last week, and I'm going to say that the goblin thing was something that was really funny to us initially because we're smug Westerners and, maybe kind of, ignorant of our own biases and our own silly beliefs. And now it's, it starts to get more and more tragic. And now it's more like, I kind of like, hey, goblin news. It's like, this is really depressing. But are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Go. I'm ready. My
Well,
body's
for those
ready.
of you just tuning in the first time, goblin news, we talk about goblins, is that in parts of Africa, you'll hear news that comes out and they talk about goblins. And we've deduced, our crack team of Weird Things scientists have realized that in many cases when they say goblin, they mean possession. But because of some translation of a native African word into an English equivalent, we use the word goblin. Although sometimes it maybe doesn't sound like possession, does sound like goblins. And our running theory in some cases where you'll hear about like goblins hypnotizing groups of people and they chase the goblin back to like a witch doctor's hut or whatever. We think that maybe hallucinogenics are in play, and maybe it's just actually cases of like rape, which isn't fun to talk about.
Yeah, correct.
Less than fun.
So that was like, hey, it's funny. Like, oh wow, there may be like a really scary pattern of like abusing people using psychotropics and stuff.
But I'm sure that's not the case on this week's Goblin News segment.
No, it's not. It's not the case on this week. The 2 bits of news here. First off, headline was belief in witchcraft sees man who killed Goblin woman acquitted. A man from Nikkei who brutally axed a mentally ill woman he suspected to be a goblin has been acquitted. Bulawayo High Court Justice Francis Beer, who is on circuit in Huing, acquitted this man, Sibagwanze Moyo of Tunke Village, of a murder charge in connection with the death of Sithabinzo Tushuma. Apparently what happened is that he was driving along, pulling a cart along with his brother, and some woman came out of the middle of nowhere and jumped them, and they leapt out of the cart, and he chased after her with an axe and basically hacked her to death.
Oh boy.
And they found the woman's body, and they tracked the tire marks, which led to the homestead. And there they said, hey, guess what? You know how you didn't actually kill a goblin, you killed a mentally ill woman.
So
he said his defense is
Good
when
thing
I saw
we're bringing
her
the laughs here, folks.
yeah. He said when I saw her by the roadside, she looked like a goblin. And they're like, and this is an area where there's a big belief in goblins and stuff. And so he wrote, he said that a strange creature jumped and grabbed him by the neck, and they wrestled while his brother and his son watched from a distance. We wrestled with the strange creature. I was carrying an axe, which I used to strike it twice, and it fell down. He argued that he mistook the woman for goblin and acted in self-defense.
So I'm trying to figure out what an equivalent legal precedent in Western law would be. I mean, certainly there have been cases of somebody killing somebody that they justifiably thought to be a murderer, right? And that even though it was the wrong person, they were acquitted because they thought they were killing the right person. Well, I mean, here was an instance,
but remember that he said he was attacked. Like, it's if you're not provoked, like you can, if you know that somebody killed, your family member and you go kill them, you're going to be tried, which you should be,
Yeah.
But if you are attacked by somebody and you have reason to think that you're in danger, beyond just, what's the appropriate response, and obviously you live in Texas. It's like, hey,
it's the castle doctrine. It's like hey man, my state is my castle. I fear for my life, and you're in Texas.
I think you looked in my backyard. Did you look at me on Google Earth? So here it's here the presence. He's saying I was attacked. I think goblins are real. I had a reason to think this was a goblin, and the only way you can handle a goblin is apparently with an axe. So it's this weird, scary, and I think if you took even the goblin element out of it, it would be an interesting sort of self-defense, whatever.
Right. Well, does belief that they're doing the right thing mitigate the punishment they should receive for something? Like, if a real innocent person dies, but you honestly think you're defeating evil, I mean, let's say in a time of war, right? Like, somebody is like, yeah, this guy's definitely a Nazi spy. I've discovered he's a Nazi spy, and I took him out. Turns out, whoops, he's not a Nazi spy. Does it make it okay that you killed him?
That's a high stakes gamble. You better have dotted your I's and crossed your T's on that Nazi spy business.
Well, sure, but I mean, but also, again, I guess the standard of evidence changes during times of war, because it seems like they don't look nearly as tightly as that at those times.
But even then, if you're not in a clear path of present danger, you would have to say, like, I saw him with a bomb in his briefcase. You'd have to have such and even not forgetting time of war. If you said, like, I saw a guy with a gun aim it at a bunch of kids on a schoolyard, and like you didn't know they were shooting a movie or whatever, and you were carrying a weapon and you shot the guy because you saw a gun and you saw this. It's going to be, every court's going to have a different decision, but you can make a case like, listen, like, was I supposed to wait to find out? And that's what cops go through all the time is like it was a toy gun. Like, he wasn't with them at Toys R Us when they bought it,
Right.
And that's where it gets gray. It gets so gray.
I'm glad you
So,
said gray.
I think this one's a little harder to justify, though, right?
Well, no. I mean, if it's harder, see, that's the problem is if we say it's harder, we're likely saying it's harder because we come from a place of educated privilege where we could say, well, it's obviously harder because there is no such thing as goblins and he's dumb for thinking there was, which I don't know if that's culturally appropriate for us to do.
Well,
But-
you
Well,
know,
how
I don't necessarily think that it's totally cut and dry, because we also read a lot of these stories and a lot of them are like, no, we need to banish the goblin, right?
Yeah.
Like you go to a witch doctor and get the
Well, he
goblin.
banished the goblin.
I mean, so yeah, I don't know, man. So wait, this dude got off?
So he was acquitted.
Yeah, I mean,
But remember, he says he was attacked. He was physically attacked, and so if you take the element of goblin out of there, you would still have reasonable is it excessive self-defense?
sure, but the goblin certainly supercharges. I don't know what he means when he says he was attacked. I mean, for all we know, let's say it's somebody who has Tourette's and and she accosts him,
from the stage.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, let's make things a little bit murkier, gentlemen, because I have another bit of goblin news.
Yeah, well, only if it's
double
breaking
dip
goblin
it.
news.
Ready for this? Oh, this is breaking, all right. Dateline. Today. Zim Man mistakes wife for goblin, stabs her to death with chisel. A Zimbabwean man who fatally stabbed his wife after mistaken for a goblin has reportedly, we'll see what the resolution is going to be in the court, but anyhow, this totally separate incident. This man woke up, apparently mistook his wife for a goblin and that had been punching him during the night, and he somehow got hold of a chisel and stabbed her above the breast several times using stabbing her on the chest and neck, and then apparently stabbed himself once and then asked for help.
Do you think it makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint that we would all huddle up in tribes adhering to Dunbar's number, and that anything not in our tribe is the other, and that we should demonize the other, and that's how our tribe survives? Do you think that this goblin stuff is just another manifestation of the idea that there's the us and the other, and that they're not human, and that makes it okay to kill?
Well, I'll fill in some details. Apparently, this guy had been having hallucinations and stuff, and he was acquitted of this incident. But they're going to keep him at a mental health facility until doctors certify he can go back into society. So apparently, he had gone to like traditional healers over his hallucinations, and had been trying to seek. He'd apparently been having a problem of seeing stuff, and was probably unbalanced, probably had some sort of, schizophrenia or something to that degree is what I would suspect.
Now,
Yeah.
it rings a bell that you do have cases here in America where people even just come out of like sleep, like dreams, like very vivid dreams that wind up either doing physical harm or killing people that are in bed with them, right?
Yeah, and we've had our own share of people like guys macheting or samurai sorting people because they were going through hallucinations and thought they were like killing demons and stuff. I mean that happens here too. So and not to belittle and say, oh, those people over there. No, happens here too. And that often is a sign of schizophrenia. I would say that in the case, Brian, your point about the othering or whatever is that we try to embrace this idea of scientific thought as the idea that like we can test some belief systems, and there is a resistance in some countries, and particularly in certain African countries, which are they want to quote like decolonialize themselves, and part of that means a rejection of Western things, including things like Western science. And there have been people advocating like, well, we think maybe traditional forms of knowledge are just as valid as Western science, and maybe we should reject that. And people make claims of like, I know in this village these amazing things happen. Science can't explain it. And when we could like, well, yeah, maybe it doesn't happen, and that's our explanation. But there is this push against the idea that one, it's sort of a silly belief, and I think that empiricism's it's not a Western invention. It's been independently come up in cultures around the world.
Sure. But culturally, it's certainly identified as a Western tradition, right?
Yeah, and that makes things muddy, because then it's if you say, well, it's a Western thing. Well, that's one, it's not, and then but then it becomes a reason to say if you want to embrace a more magical way of the world, you have this ready-made way. Like, well, that's this Western thing, and we know that's all bad, so we'll just get rid of that, and I'm gonna hop on my flying carpet and fly around.
Man, I'd be all in if I could actually have a flying carpet. That was like one of those like elements of Stranger in a Strange Land, where it's like you read some of the criticism of like, oh, like it's just, they just all join a socialist cult or whatever. And I'm like, man, I'd be all in for a socialist cult where I have like superpowers and I never age and, everybody has sex with each other. Like, yeah, no, I'm in. Like, cause that, the proof's in the pudding there, right?
Yeah. Bernie Sanders, I hope you're listening.
People don't join the cult saying like, I sure hate capitalism. Where's a place for me? Oh, good, it's here. People are like, no, man, I want to join the Justice League. Let's go. What's my power?
Well, gentlemen, you know what my power is?
Is it to funnel people to your friend of mine, patreon.com/weirdthings, where people can keep our show loud, live, and on the regular? You could join a community of nearly 500 people, 500 people, and at just $1 an episode, you could keep the weird things coming. Special investigations, getting our producer Bryce to Mars. All these things can actually happen if you.
Sure.
I mean, eventually.
If
you
the systems
join
are
us,
in place to make that happen.
become a patron at patreon.com/weirdthings.
Mars needs Bryce.pizza. Mars needs Bryce.pizza.
And if our bonus round is the volcano for Bryce.
That's right, the volcano material.
Volcano sub.
Grizzly
volcano
bear cage.
sub.
Yeah.
See, all we have to do is, okay, look, and I've been thinking about this, right? All we have to do is construct a submarine made of diamonds, and in it, and actually nest it inside a slightly larger submarine, also made of diamonds, with a vacuum in between the two. That would be a thermal barrier. We could dive him in. He could look around and look for lava monsters, because we all know they're down there swimming around.
There might be something to that, Brian.
See? This guy thinking upstairs.
But it's expensive.
And you can think upstairs as well when you go to patreon.com/weirdthings and support our podcast.
It is problematic that diamond actually conducts heat even better than metal.
But you had a vacuum in there, though. You had a vacuum layer there.
Yeah, I can't figure out how to bind the inner submarine outside of the outer submarine. We're working on it. There's something.
What about a
aerogel,
stick?
Brian? You got it. No, I'm on board, Brian.
Okay, good,
Like,
good. We're good.
Listening. I'm like, all right, tell me more. Like, okay, vacuum layer, other diamond. I'm like, this is good. This could work. We can just get 5 tons of solid diamond.
Well, we grow them now, right? It's like you get a hyper what is it, methane? How do they grow diamonds? It's like they create an atmosphere of supercharged like methane that has like extra carbon atoms, and they all float around and they grow them like crystals, right?
Yeah, it's just hard to get like beyond a certain level because eventually impurities coming in your crystals just go, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. Makes sense.
All right.
Still.
Can I throw in a little mini thing before we get into more important and weighty topics? Have you guys seen the animatronics in the new Avatar world in Disney opening next year?
No.
If you can, I think it is a Na'vi shaman, Bryce. If you can find it, but it's an animatronics test. It's a very short clip. I'll see if I can find it for you guys.
Is it part of this presentation?
Like for our audio listeners, like as I feel like I'm thinking about a clip, Bryce is already like YouTubing it or finding it or whatever.
By the way, I regret that you guys don't even get to see, like out of my peripheral vision, I catch on one of the monitors as the words are spoken. All I see is a flurry of cursors and typing, and suddenly magic occurs.
Yeah. We're watching the behind the scenes they just did for the Pandora thing, which is going to be the new Avatar exhibit at Animal Kingdom, and it's beautiful. I mean, absolutely beautiful. And I think it's oh wow, we're looking at, I think, an animatronic here.
Is that an animatronic? No. All right, so we're seeing footage from a presentation. So this is like as if it's a bootleg from San Diego Comic-Con. Where we're seeing essentially concept art and tests for
here, Bryce.
real
I just
Pandora.
put it in the Skype chat. If we can just pull this up, this is a clip from Disney, where you see this in action. What we are seeing right now in kind of the
in the perfect concept B-roll. So, all right, there we go. Right now, oh my goodness, this looks extraordinary.
I look forward to seeing you on Pandora. Well, not te kame.
Wow.
Was that okay?
Wow!
right?
Wow! The breaking of character translates note for note by the robot. Wow.
Well, not te
So
kame.
that's like the big reveal in this little clip.
Okay.
Is you see kind of like what looks like great, like obviously top of the line animatronics of this Navi talking to the camera, and then she turns slightly off camera to ask whether or not the take was okay, and immediately it just becomes real, and everything that you saw before was this robot acting, and this robot was real when she looks off camera. It's so cool.
Man, that's fantastic. Hey, how you guys liking the future so far? Pretty great, right?
I got some more future stuff for you. Ready?
Let's go, let's go.
Not all of it can be good news,
Uh-oh.
but behind every setback, there is something that moves forward, and we have to understand that. So, first up is last week we teased that there was a paper about the EM drive. The EM drive is a drive, a propulsion system that doesn't use any propellant. It's just electrically driven, and it's supposed to be able to move forward. And this was a paper that purportedly done by NASA, and it was leaked. We didn't know if it actually got published or not, or peer reviewed. Today, we found out the truth about that allegedly leaked paper.
And it's totally real, and we all should get packing for Mars?
That would be nice, Brian. And that's what happened, is that the paper actually passed peer review. The paper passed peer review. It's an official paper. Now, again, there are a number of caveats in the paper itself. They're like, hey, listen, we've tested this system under the best conditions we can think of right now. There are a number of things that we would need to test further. But right now, we put it inside of a vacuum to make sure that there's not some sort of thermal effect going on. We're not ruling anything out. They want to be super cautious because the problem they have is it's a thing that violates the common sort of theory about how the universe works. And interesting fact to our listeners, turns out that most of the time when you think you've observed something that violates how we think the universe works, you're usually wrong and your experiment needs to be refigured out. This has been read an article, I think in Forbes or whatever, somebody who's been very critical of the EM drive, whatever, says, hey, I don't think this thing works, but I think this paper's well done. I think this is the way science should be working. And that's exactly what we've been saying is like, let's keep testing this stuff. And so far, this test, done by NASA and their research, the Eagle Works facility, seems to, again, they've tested this thing, and it's a very, very small amount of thrust compared to, let's say, even like a regular, like a Hall thruster, which uses like xenon atoms to push out the back. This is like just a metal cone that's using these microwaves that get bounced back and forth. Nothing, not even photons are going out the back, but this thing seems to move forward. They have a theory on how this works, and I'm going to butcher the theory, but basically it uses something called pilot waves, and the idea that in one version of quantum physics, there is sort of, kind of a vacuum sort of energy flux, and it pushes against that. There's sort of like a single frame thing, which would imply that you could know the position of things, which is counter to stuff, but they think there is a mechanism in which it works within quantum physics, okay? There are other theories out there that explain possible mechanisms into it. And so we're not going to find a explanation for this probably in conventional physics, but once we get into the murky area of quantum physics, perhaps there's a way where the math all balances out.
I am so happy to hear you say that because while I got the details totally different from the theory, like that was my feeling is like, yes, there's a bill to be paid for this motion that you're getting, but the bill doesn't have to be paid in our physical Newtonian world. And the idea that the bill could be paid in at the quantum level makes sense. That's amazing. That's wonderful.
So, it's warrants other places going in and looking into this. Meanwhile, one of the pioneers of the EM drive, they are actually trying to develop their own, put something into orbit to try to see if they can test this thing out, to see if let's just put this thing into space. So You have Roger Scheuer. You know, they've announced, I think, plans with the company he's working with. They're trying to commercialize this technology and develop it. There are stories allegedly that the Air Force has been looking into this. The Chinese military or space agency has been looking into this. You know, the idea of being able to understand the importance of this is that you could, in theory, have a rocket that was just solar powered and not like a solar cell, but solar sail, but could considerably go faster. You could, in theory, if you put a nuclear reactor on board a rocket and have it propel this thing, and the reactor's got a lifetime of 30 years, you don't need to refuel it at all, and it continued to accelerate and build velocity. We've talked before about the idea of cyclers, which are ships that would go from Earth to Mars orbit back and forth. Those make a lot more sense when you don't have to add propellant to them. You know, they make more sense if you want to have a big station that you want to keep going and back and forth and have just, you know, when it gets close to Earth, just accelerate people fast enough and, you know, just to send the people on board and they can live on board this big hotel. And a lot of things become possible, and interstellar travel becomes a possibility with this.
Think about it in terms of, you know, you have a house, and let's say, you know, old school thinking, 20th century thinking, you needed 3 utilities. You needed water, electricity, and gas in order to keep everything going. This would like fundamentally eliminate the need for one of those lines. All of a sudden, you know, it used to be you needed energy, fuel, and we'll say water or whatever. But now all you need is energy, and then that's it. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's the big thing that kind of trips even people up who are very knowledgeable about physics when you start talking about rocketry equations, is that when you talk about an accelerating rocket, you have all this fuel that you have to accelerate. And if we're going to go from point A to point B and then we want to come back, well, you have to have all the fuel to go from point A to point B and all the fuel to come from point B back to point A, and all that fuel you have to launch from point. I mean, it's all about fuel. Like your actual mass that you're pushing of usable payload is, you know, 2%, 3%. It's very, very small. And the idea that you don't have to refuel, incredible. So we'll see. I mean, I'm still of the belief that we're going to find out there's some sort of fundamental experimental error and it's not a real thing.
Wait,
I want to be wrong.
But let's just put in perspective for folks who don't follow this stuff regularly. If that is still the favorite, it can't still no longer be the heavy prohibitive favorite, is it? Or is it?
No, I think we're more likely to think there's some sort of experimental error.
Sure, more likely. But I think
we're still. I would say that the odds are it's looking better. You know, it's looking like it's not an easily discoverable error, but we've had research institutions with far more resources and to be able to look into stuff who have been wrong, even though they think they've looked at every bit of data.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's encouraging. It warrants more investigation. You know, if NASA had done this and they had no results on it, it'd be like, yeah, it's kind of a dead end. But this is encouraging to say, let's look more into this.
That is fascinating. I am very, 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 very excited.
Because the payoff, if it does work, if it went from a 0.0001% chance to now a 1% chance, that's significant, you know. And if it does work, I mean, if it does work, it's like it's worth the effort because it's slightly less of a long shot, and if it does have potential for it, it's not worth. There's some things that are just silly sort of ideas that just there's not a lot of credibility, and it's not worth putting the efforts into. And this is like, hey, listen. You know, it's past a couple important milestones of testing this. The likelihood is still that it's not real, but we can't just based upon everything else we know about how things work. But we can't just say that that's fait accompli. You know, we can't be dogmatic.
But we can be excited.
Yep. Nope. Exciting. And, you know, it's a very, very different role to space travel when you talk about the idea of using, you know, heavy lift rockets to put these things into orbit that they can then accelerate and go beyond. And just it really changes the way our solar system and the outer planets and everything else opens up if this works in a big way. And potentially, if you have this system that you can increase efficiency and you can get this thing fast, you could go relativistic speeds. So
that's crazy. That's well,
it's happening.
All right,
it's
so what's
happening.
The next step? Like the next step is seeing how this does out in space, right? I mean, that's the ultimate proof is in the pudding thing, right?
Yeah, that's one step. You know, it'll be interesting. It'll be a challenging thing to be able to do. I don't know what resources they have to put into it, but other universities and stuff can try to develop experiments to see if they can, you know, rule out the other causes for this, and eventually get to the, try it in close to the environment you can in space, like you can eventually. Yeah, space is the way. And the method, the apparatus they tested had very little it was very little propulsion. Far less than like a Hall thruster, an ion thruster has. But the idea is, they said in the paper, like, we're not trying to maximize efficiency. We just want to see if this thing works. After we figure out what works, we can then figure out how do you make this thing more efficient, if it works. So,
Damn.
Another big interesting thing happened on Thursday from NASA.
Mm-hmm.
NASA put out a request to companies and organizations to say, we're looking at for ways to try to lower our costs on our SLS and our Orion program. SLS is the new big heavy lift rocket system that NASA is looking to take us back beyond Earth orbit. Orion is the crew capsule that goes on board there. And SLS is based in many ways on shuttle technology, even Saturn V technology. Very big, powerful rocket system. The problem is that the cost has just gotten more and more expensive, and that it's about a $3 billion a year program currently for NASA for development. And then once completed, it's going to be maybe we'd be able to afford to launch it once a year, at $1 billion plus for that. And even the head of the program is like, it's too expensive the way it is. We've got to figure out a way to sort of lower our costs. And SLS is not reusable. It is you send this thing up, and it's a traditional rocket system. It's less reusable than the shuttle, and it's a very expensive project. And NASA, knowing that, hey, we've got a change in administration, we know there are different priorities, let's start talking to private industry and saying what other options are on the table, and meaning that they are open to, they'd like to keep the SLS, but if, let's say, I don't know, an upstart space company with their own heavy lift rocket could come in and make a proposal for hey, we've got this really cool program that's called the Interplanetary Transport System that could do low Earth orbit and beyond, and we're looking for, if you put up half the money and we put up half the money for developing it, we think we can save you money and help you do all of these outer space missions. We'd be up for it. So
let me ask you this, because obviously nothing this big like the SLS happens without a lot of people touching it. Right?
Yep.
Let's say, as a metaphor, I know how much you love metaphors, Andrew, that, you're in a long-term relationship where you're living with somebody. And then you just say, hey, listen, this doesn't mean that anything's changing, but I'd like to cast about publicly for suggestions on how we can continue to make our relationship happen. Isn't that kind of like a prelude? Isn't the solicitation its own gigantic declaration that maybe this project's going to go into a different direction?
Let me say, imagine you're living with this person. Your deal is that you guys are going to split costs, split rent, all that.
Yeah.
Okay. And every month, though, when it's time to pay rent, you notice that they're not really paying up their share. They've been actually, using a lot more electricity, and there was nothing, a little more electricity, and the bills are going up, and it's getting a lot more expensive than what the arrangement was going to be. Yeah, I would say that analogy works. So
this is, obviously, listen, we are absolute stans for private space travel and SpaceX and Blue Origin and everything. We are huge fanboys there. It is, I think, safe to say our belief is NASA can maximize what they do. That is amazing and awesome for this country and the world at large if they use cheaper tools as opposed to a highly expensive made-to-order solution.
What we're huge NASA fanboys too, and that NASA, my book, How to Make Money, I dedicated to NASA because you start looking at just the history of achievement and what they've done, and this amazing organization, and there's just really no parallel in human civilization. We want them to have the best tools, and NASA's been an organization for the longest time had to been beholden to certain government contractors who in other areas have done amazing, wonderful things. A big reason that, I can fly across country so dirt cheap is that, what Boeing has done in air travel and Lockheed has done, in technology and stuff. They're amazing companies, but when they're in markets that are, cost plus markets and things like that, they become efficient systems for that, meaning for them, and that's why we have battleships that have $800,000 rounds we can't afford to use because they're too expensive. It's why we have entire launch industry that's designed to cater only to kind of military and every now and then a NASA thing, which is expensive. So our goal is we want more space science, more of that. And there's a when you have people like Jeff Bezos, who's worth $70 gazillion billion, saying, yeah, I'm going to put my own private money into developing a better technology. And you have Elon Musk saying, yeah, I'm going to develop privately and spend money to develop a better technology for this. Great. It's free money in a sense for NASA. NASA can say, well, we can spend $20 billion over here and have a rocket that we don't have any money left over to actually do any missions. Or we can say, hey, no, we're going to spend $10 billion buying these services from them, and then have $10 billion to go spend on going to the moon, going to the Mars, going beyond.
So I don't know. In my mind, it feels like the difference between having a made-to-order clothes, like a tailor, right? Just constantly making all of your own private clothes. It's like, all right, how about we just take that budget and just buy like Gucci and Versace? Like, it's still going to be great. You're still going to get great things. They're just going to not be personally made with if not a blank check, close to a blank check.
We have now is that, Blue Origin, which, can't discount them. They've announced that they're building their new Glenn rocket system, which they want to build their own heavy lift system. So it's not just, this isn't just a, hey, therefore SpaceX could get this opportunity. It also means Blue Origin can step into this system and say, hey, and we can have a couple people both planning to bid, bid for NASA's, contracts to be able to do this. And it might be room enough, maybe both, because it would give us a reliability there. That's what's exciting, is that it's not just, therefore we do corporate cronyism for one company.
No. It's a market. There's a market now. There's multiple competitors. There's people who are trying to move things forward on a very real level. And I don't blame NASA for being, very careful on this. I mean, like, again, to the great angst of so many people that we care about, this is a organization that oftentimes has very precarious budgets and, has to always justify what they're doing. And so, you don't want to rush into something, but I think that the SLS is not what it was when it was initially conceived, considering what's happened in rocketry.
Yeah, and when the SLS was conceived, that reusability wasn't even really a discussion. At the time, it was like, well, we needed to have a heavy lift system to regain that. It absolutely made sense of that, but we've seen so much stuff happening, in the world of what's been going on with, the private space and all that. It's a very kind of exciting sort of point, and that's the NASA's been kind of trying to be very realistic about that. Now, as far as there's questions like, what does our current incoming presidential administration feel about space and stuff? Well, you can read their space policy papers. Go to like space.news or space news, and you can check them out. Extremely pro working with, they mentioned SpaceX, they mentioned Blue Origin, they mentioned, the papers prepared by Walker and Albrecht, talk about this stuff of like where they're going, and they're Superman in space, superhuman space exploration, more so than actually the Hillary Clinton plan was for space. There was not a lot of discussion there actually about, manned exploration of space. It was just none of it really. And nothing really about like, mentioning SpaceX by name and stuff. So super pro into the idea of the people who are looking to maybe run NASA now, super pro space exploration, all that. And they're looking at like shifting NASA budgets around and whatever, which might be very frustrating. It could be very frustrating for people who want to have different priorities or whatever, but it's actually an extremely pro space, human exploration of space plan. We'll see what happens. Because, campaign promises and plans, I don't know if you know this, can change.
Everyone always does everything they promise on the campaign, especially somebody who doesn't read off a teleprompter.
Yeah. So it's actually been the most pro human exploration of space. Like the paper talks about, we don't just want to go to the moon and Mars. We want to talk about the end of the century being colonizing the rest of the solar system. It was the most proactive. They're bringing back the National Space Council. Okay, the National Space Council was a way to sort of unify all of our space efforts from the Air Force, NASA, everything, because the problem is like Air Force might be spending $20 billion on space technology here. NASA was spending money there. And the idea was you might be able to get them together and say, hey, listen, if we had like one or two really good heavy lift rocket systems that we bought from private enterprise, could we economize what we're doing, but actually have a much more efficient system and actually be able to do more? And so it's a very proactive step. It's one of the most proactive steps taken towards space in, 2 decades. So,
hey, can we talk about this other story?
Yeah, good point, Brian. So like, hey, but if you're like SpaceX, you want to build this rocket, you need money. How are you going to pay for this, Brian?
Well, I don't know. Maybe
$10 billion, Brian. $10 billion.
I mean, it just seems like maybe you'd come up with a unconventional way to deliver a much needed commodity to, I don't know, every single human on the planet. You'd have to think big, and of course you'd have to. What's that?
What can SpaceX provide for me other than a trip to Mars, Brian? What could they possibly be able to provide?
Well, I mean, once you get out of the atmosphere, there's a number of things you could set up. Like, you could put a satellite up, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Or...
Oh, great! I'm going to buy a satellite. Thank you, Brian. Great plan.
No, well, I mean, you wouldn't get the satellite just for this.
Kickstarter. Kickstarter.com/friendly satellite.
Okay. Well, what if you put up a large array of satellites that completely cover the Earth at low Earth orbits so that you could have...
My Kickstarter isn't even 10% funded yet. Friendly satellite is Kickstarter.com/friendly satellite isn't even 10%. Now you're talking about thousands of them?
All right, look.
Brian, there's only like 2,500 satellites up there right now, and you want 4,000?
No, I want 4,425 of them, all at different orbits, all linked together with super low latency, high bandwidth internet access, bringing gigabit internet access to everyone on the planet.
Yeah, but Brian, I ran the numbers. If you're doing satellites in low Earth orbit, it's actually faster than fiber optic. Never mind.
Yeah, yeah. That's the there's a group of gamers that we have a little listserv that we've been chatting for like 15, 20 years, and a friend of mine posted this story on there with yes, if you haven't heard, Elon Musk went to the FCC asking for permission to put up more satellites than currently exist. Like, hey, you know how many satellites all of humanity's done up to this point? I want to put a few more than that up and have them all linked up together to provide super low latency, high-speed internet to everyone across the planet. Now, the problem is that most geostationary satellites are very, very far away. It takes a good half second for a signal to get all the way up there. So latency is really bad. And there's, stuff like weather conditions and stuff has a very big effect because you're shooting that beam a very, very long way. The idea from this article is that SpaceX will launch because they have an advantage of being able to deliver low-cost items to orbit. They would deliver 4,425 satellites at varying orbits, varying heights, varying directions.
But low Earth orbit, yeah.
Yeah, low Earth orbit. So basically, and keep in mind, think in terms of like geostationary means that it's pretty much, if it's over Houston, it stays over Houston. The only way to do that is to be very, very far out, depending on the weight of the object, and which is problematic if what you want to do is get fast access.
20,000 miles away, basically.
Correct, 20,000 miles away. Whereas low Earth orbit, you're looking at what? Is it 700 miles? Is that
200 to like 1,000 miles up? These will be about 1,000 miles up.
So the downside about that is that means they're only overhead for a few seconds. They're like zip, 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 zip all over the place. But if you have an array of them to the tune of 4,425 of them, you're coated in this warm blanket of so many freaking high-speed satellites that at any given moment, there's one only a scant 1 millisecond away by the speed of light terms, right? So that means you can have low latency, super high bandwidth, gigabit internet to the entire Earth. This is a big, big, big idea. This is 1,000-year thinking happening, only it'll probably be done in our lifetimes.
Well, Brian, let me try to channel the best criticisms I've seen so far.
Actually, I can. Let me share the story because I noticed I was surprised to see, and I think and first of all, full disclosure, we are all infected with the Elon Musk fanboy virus, right? Like, you must take everything we say with a grain of salt. Well, there's a million reasons we could be wrong. We're going to see
just
everything.
rubbing my chest there.
Andrew, right now for the audio listeners, trying to display the fact that he's wearing a SpaceX shirt by tussling the SpaceX logo, which then slowly and erotically becomes him rubbing his nipple.
So,
Same thing.
somebody responded, and there is an alternate point of view. My uncle really surprised me by talking about how he thinks that Elon Musk is a con artist and so on. But somebody in the listserv said, too bad he'll be bankrupt before it happens. $4.9 billion in taxpayer money to create these three companies that can't turn a profit. There's not enough of millennial fanboys to keep this crap afloat. Total boondoggle. And so I looked. I was like, well, that's interesting. I wonder if he knows something I don't. So I looked up, and there was a, not that it's the international standard, but International Business Time. Sorry.
Oh, boy.
Wait, no, that's not what I was looking at. There was I looked for Elon Musk report card on how he's doing in terms of the things he promises and what he actually delivers. And at age 45, they gave him 5 out of 5 for Tesla, 4 out of 5 for Solar City, 4 out of 5 for OpenAI, 5 out of 5 for SpaceX, and then overall they gave him 5 out of 5 for ambition, technical prowess, 4 out of 5 for ability to execute, 4.5 out of 5 for personal time management, and a well-deserved, I think, 2.5 for ability to stick to deadlines, which I think is fine. Like, yes, ding him.
He would agree to that.
Yes, ding him for that. Yes, he has
It's not
very.
ability to stick to, I mean, he would define deadlines differently. He always says that's the best case scenario of delivery.
Right. So, but at any rate, I gotta tell you, it's number one. It's interesting to hear an anti-Musk backlash, and I would be really curious to hear from anybody who rolls their eyes at our general, I'd like to think generally tempered enthusiasm for what Elon Musk is shooting for.
And I have a good friend who is a writer and a columnist who wrote a thing and was critical of Musk about the handouts and stuff like that. And I wrote a reply. I'm like, listen, like it's if you want to talk about like corporate handouts, stuff like that's valid, but one, as I said, I point out, like, yeah, this thing you said you got this free government money, that was a loan they paid back, okay? Then that wasn't noted in the article. Two, is it like, oh, he's getting these tax credits on these vehicles? Yeah, so does every Ford electric car. But also when Elon Musk, their business model, by the way, going forward for the Model 3 is they're not counting on getting that, like Ford will sell you a car for like an electric car for $30,000, so they end up getting like a $15,000 bonus they can apply to their other parts of their gas fleet kind of thing. It's a funky, weird economics, and they've now said, yeah, we're not going to be able to deliver as many bolts in this year as we thought we promised and we got the cover of Wired for. You hear about like, oh, they got this big deal, like this government, all this handout in Nevada for building their factory. Like, no, they got like a tax break, basically saying if you build it here, we're not going to tax you as much, and it's assuming this over period of time. It's not this. It's this portrayed as like they're just getting this cash, and it's often so much not what it is. And they're not getting any breaks anybody else in their business isn't already getting, and that's the thing is it's like, well, what about this? Like, are you upset that Ford and Toyota get that too, which they do? Are you upset that McDonnell Douglas or, that Boeing and Lockheed get those things? Were you upset about that? And it's like, well, they've been getting all this NASA money. The vast majority of the NASA money has been for contracts to deliver stuff. They've been paid to put things into orbit, not just, we're just going to give you a check, do whatever you want. So
sure.
I would say that we welcome the comments, but make sure you've done because here's the thing. Tell us what you think. Do your damn homework, because if you don't do your homework, we will call you out on it.
Well, and keep in mind, like they are correct.
Our job. We are the watchers on the wall.
I'm saying I get frustrated because I get this on Twitter, like, well, they got this. I'm like, what? You don't even know anything about it. You just read a headline. You didn't read that, and you didn't even follow through on that. And it drives me nuts. It's like, it's fine to be against it.
And the criticism that, he made 3 companies that can't turn a profit or whatever, that may be perfectly valid. However, I don't know that that's a very good metric. I would think we would all agree, by and large, Amazon is an incredibly successful company. It took them 20 years to become profitable. 20 years. I think it was 2013 was the first time they turned a profit?
That also is kind of by design. I mean, Amazon very famously runs very, very thin, not only in their margins on what they sell, but also they invest a lot. You know,
Yeah.
that's like their bit. Their bit is like, yeah, no, we will like we are building the big beautiful machine, and we will probably continue to build it forever.
And that's that thing of, I had this with my friend, like, well, like, looks like Tesla's losing money. I'm like, you're counting what they're spending on future production. You know, when they're building the world's largest factory to produce batteries, when they're building an entire factory to build the Model 3 car, and that's part of their expenses right now. You know, the Model X, the Model S are profitable cars. They make 20 to 30% profit on those units. It's just they're taking all the profit they're making plus the money they're borrowing to build for future capacity. It's like if I have a McDonald's and this McDonald's making money, but I borrow money to build 3 more McDonald's, you don't say that McDonald's is a failure, you know? And that's the metric. And it's, people look for a reason to go, oh, they're a failure. And they just go, oh, look, they're you know, are profitable.
And part of it is that, you know, as we have seen Silicon Valley become the hub of exciting, explosive American business, there is this capacity where very, very famous companies are still searching for their profit model, like Twitter or something like that, right? Where people are trying to figure out exactly how they are going to make money. And so it's like, well, build it, get the people there, become famous, IPO, and, you know, we'll figure out this profitability thing down the road. I don't think that SpaceX, I can understand where people would think SpaceX and Tesla, having come from the same cloth, could do that, or you could adjust the numbers to think of it. But it seems like there's no question for SpaceX what their profit model is. There's no question for Tesla what their profit model is. It's a matter of them continuing to build it and see that plan through. And that's the difference.
Man, do we have time to do a little journey quest?
Oh, shoot. Journey Quest. Gentlemen, where were we last on Journey Quest?
Let me pull up my notes.
Ryan was sneaking. He was sneaking and creeping.
That's right.
And he got cornered by one of the scientists.
That's right. Turns out that the gun had no bullets in it.
And
so
you
I tried
his
to
Quiznos sandwich.
I did. It was so good.
Yes. So Brian was munching on the Quiznos sandwich. And next thing you know, he stole a gun. He gets cornered by a scientist and his helper. And Brian's like, aha! And he starts to pull the trigger.
Yeah, but they seem to recognize me, right?
Yeah, they're like, clickety, 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 click. Brian's like, all right, maybe I can throw this at you. And then all of a sudden, he feels a little bit woozy. He's like, wait, what's that sauce on my Quiznos sandwich?
Oh, no, they poisoned the sandwich? That's
They did
that's
something to the sandwich,
diabolical.
Brian.
That's diabolical.
You could have your choice. It could be poison. It could be maybe some sleeping agent, or maybe something really, really you don't want to know they did to the sandwich because it gets boring in the basement.
All right. So while my fleeting consciousness fades, I ask, as like, where's Justin?
Justin's hanging from a wall. He's contemplating his mouthiness.
Justin, I'm here.
So
for
Brian,
Justin.
you pass out, and I'm just going to tell you that as you wake up, you're gonna pass in and out of consciousness. You're going to find yourself strapped down to a table.
Oh dear.
And you're going to be posed with a question. Okay. Meanwhile, Justin.
Yeah.
Right. You hear footsteps. The doors open. Creak.
Yeah.
Voice next to the bag. It's like, all right, are you going to cooperate or not?
Yeah, I'm in. What's up?
All right. Listen, we need a guy to go into cover. We think there's a colony of people that may have the solution, the thing that saved them. You know, we want to know if you're in. If you want to be our guy to go find out what it is.
Do I get to ask you who we are?
We're the good guys, Justin.
Said every conquering civilization ever.
Hey, basement. Make sure to put the gag in your patient. If I can hear him through the pipe.
Justin, don't listen. They're bad people. They drugged me with the Quiznos.
I liked it was better. I liked it better when I thought he was dead.
Also, their guns have no bullets. I don't think they know about ammunition.
All right.
You've seen them
here's a
shoot
zip.
many
They're
people.
letting you out of the bag. The guy's like, come on out here, Justin. Sit down at the table. Let's talk man to man, all right?
All right.
Pulls out bag of delicious. I got a delicious warm Quiznos sub. We've actually got a Quiznos on the premises here.
Quiznos, is it true
Here,
they
I'll
have a
share it
pepper
with
bar?
you. Here, you can have half of it, all right?
You eat first.
Sure. Nom, 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 nom.
All right.
I love me some Quiznos.
I eat the Quiznos.
Okay, eat the Quiznos. Like, isn't that good? Is that good? You know, it's like, I think they only have RC here or whatever, or Pepsi products, but I'll bring some Coca-Cola from the vending machine. What do you want?
I want to know what the deal is, bro. Like, I appreciate the Quiznos and everything, and
I certainly enjoy the fact that their toasted buns make it all the more delicious, so far superior to the competition, and boy, that brown mustard spread can't be beat. However,
that
what
hot
I
pepper
really
bar,
need
too.
is a bit of delightful chicken noodle soup available
Swear
at
to
a
God, I'm
supersite.
this close to Googling Quiznos right now to see where there's one near me. So, listen. Justin, it's the guy you're looking at. He's a white-haired guy. He's got glasses on. You know, he's wearing a suit. You know, he's this very kind of a sort of a little pudgy, sort of bureaucratish kind of guy. He's like, do we have to talk about work, man? I'm going to go to the vending machine. What do you want?
Okay.
Dr. Pepper guy? Are you Dr.
Get me a Dr. Pepper, but
right.
I do have two very important questions that I want to ask you, and you can think about it on the way to getting this.
All right, go for it.
I got my best friend in Los Angeles, and I got my wife in Oakland, California. This journey that I am on with Brian Brushwood, who I assume is alive because he's still screaming in the basement, tell
him, Justin! You tell him!
Just shut up. We have just been trying to get there to find out whether or not they are still alive. So go grab the Dr. Pepper and think about your answer when you come back.
Audio listeners, I want you to know that Bryce has already superimposed the Quiznos logo in the upper left-hand corner of the video feed.
We cashed this in for a Quiznos thing. I'm going to be all in.
Let's
If you keep
just
talking up Dr. Pepper,
let's just send them an invoice and see if they pay for it.
hey, it's worked before.
He's like, Justin, I hear you. You know, we're trying to. There's a knock on the door. There's a couple soldiers there with like gas masks on and guns, and they've got a tray, and they come and they sit it down. There's some Dr. Peppers there for you. I brought you three Dr. Peppers, you know. And we had we had some Little Debbie's cakes too, you know, in case you want some of those. So they're on the tray too. All right. And what's your favorite candy? Are you a Skittles guy or Mike and Ike's? What's your thing?
Can we get down to business?
I'm getting down to business, but it's been business. You know, apocalypses are hard to manage. You know, I may have taken a class at Wharton's on this thing, but it's different than having to deal with the real thing, okay? So, here's what I can tell you, okay? We don't have communications all over. We don't know who's alive or who's dead, you know, whether your awesome friend in Los Angeles is still alive, whether your lovely bride is in Oakland or if she's like, you know, been sold off to some biker gang going across Utah. Don't know. Can't tell you that. We're trying to figure these things out, but we've got to establish order. I've got to stop people from dying left and right from this disease. And if you want to help them, then you help me. That's the best way forward.
When can I leave?
You can leave. Checks his watch. I can have you out this door in 15 minutes.
What do you need?
Reaches into his desk, slides it open, pulls out a yellow legal pad, puts it in front of you, puts a pen in front of you. Says, it's very easy. You know, communication is very difficult. And what I need is, I've noticed that you seem to be pretty healthy. You seem to have an immunity. Your friend, but we think he's, you know, going through some sort of delusions. He may have some sort of brain impairment, whatever. He just cannot stop his mouth. Other than that, he seems to be kind of healthy. We've noticed a couple other people that we've been able to pick up who are healthy have been wearing this gang slogan, this gang logo, which we're not sure if you're familiar with or whatever, but it looks like two arrows pointing away from each other. And we're trying to figure out if this is a cult. You know, we're trying to figure out what kind of organization this is. We kind of suspect that you've been involved in this cult.
So what do you need?
Are you involved with something called? Hold on, let me check my notes here. Knights of the Columbus, Opus Dei. No. John Birch Society. No. Diamond Club.
Bitch, I might be.
Pardon me.
You heard me, dog.
Are you not currently a member of Diamond Club?
Are you now, or have you ever been?
Thanks, voice in the basement.
I'm just channeling McCarthy.
Listen. There is no such thing as Diamond Club. And there never was. There's no leader to Diamond Club.
That's two different answers, and neither one of us very satisfactory.
Okay. Cool
story,
dude.
bro.
All right, so what you're telling me is that is there an organization called Diamond Club?
How do you define organization?
How do you define organization?
An organization
quiz
is
notes.
a
The least you can do is
top-down
that.
a top-down group of people that has a leader. And I'm telling you that Diamond Club never has nor never will have a leader.
Yeah, you see that? You know what that was? I just swatted your Dr. Pepper out of your hand.
Oh, God. All right.
See these other two Dr. Peppers? I'm going to let them get room temperature now.
Okay. What do you want, dude? Like, just let me just... I'll help you out.
That's cruel.
What is Diamond Club?
Let him have his Dr. Pepper cold. That ain't right.
What is Diamond Club?
Diamond Club. Well, it's tough and resilient as the material from DuPont.
All right. He picks up a Dr. Pepper. He pops it open. I'm going to let it lose its carbonation now.
Hey, man, that ain't right. It's almost 2 o'clock.
All right. Number one. Okay. So what's your name? What can I call you?
You can call me Professor Hollover.
All right, Professor Hollover. Here's the deal. I might have been a little cagey just then. It's because I'm very sensitive. I'm a sensitive artist. And I was very hurt and offended by the fact that you have not heard the #1 podcast in post-apocalyptic America. Me and Brian have been continuing to do a podcast that we did before the world fell apart. And I was offended that you hadn't listened to it, because if you had listened to it, then you would know the answer to all your questions.
So what is Diamond Club?
Diamond Club is not only a confederation of supporters and independent artists who want nothing but peace and love and share all of their podcasts with each other.
That sounds wonderful. I don't see why you were trying to hide that. Jeez. Okay, so this is what we know. We know that we had a large degree of members of Diamond Club in one location. I think it was at something called Monster Fest? No, wait. Dragon Con. There we go. That's what. Let me check my notes here. And I think that was the last time all of you guys were together. Is that correct? Because we've noticed a high degree of immunity among people who were there.
There are, which they might be.
Great. Here's what I need you to do. Here's a pencil. Here's a piece of paper. Just write down the names of everybody you can remember who is there.
All right. Fine. Perfect. All right. Here we go. Mark Marin. The cereal lady. That one Chris Hardwick. Chris Hardwick's friend that does other stuff. All right. Well, there we go. There's the four. The four of them that were there.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Hold on. I'm going to go check on this because I think we have two of these people right here in the facility right now. I'm going to see if this vouches, okay? I'll be right back. 5 minutes later, there's a knock on the door. I don't know why I knocked on my own door there. Maybe you're enjoying your Dr. Pepper and I didn't interrupt you. Are you sure about this list?
I mean, I got to tell you, dude, you ever been to Dragon Con? Hall over?
Yeah, because, the last thing Mark Maron said through his screams before he died under our investigation thing was he insisted that he was not at Dragon Con at that location when he said that he was there.
Yeah.
And we think maybe he was protecting for you, which was good. And we didn't actually offer to torture him, but he requested it. It was really weird. But anyhow, it doesn't sort of match up.
So what are you trying to do? You trying to torture anybody who's been a part of Diamond Club?
Well, no, you told us he was there. He said that
I didn't tell you to torture him. I'll tell you what. This is the kind of disgusting, perverse bait and switch that you would never get from Stamps.com.
All I'm saying is that we went to talk to Mark. Mark said, no, that guy's a liar. And I'm like, how would you even accuse my friend of being a liar? Justin's been very, very straightforward with me. And we're like, would you take a lie detector test? He's like, dude, you can waterboard me. I wasn't there. We're like, well, since you agreed to it.
I mean, listen, just what is it? NSFW episode 3? Go and check it out. So see whether or not he's a liar or I'm a liar.
Yeah, well, we can't really talk to him anymore. So
okay, good. So you killed him. What's your end game
here, dude?
dude?
You killed him. You named him. You implicated him. You killed him.
You asked me who was there. You didn't tell me we're going to kill these people.
We're trying to save lives by finding out the immunity here, and you gave us the name of somebody, and before I go through these complicated procedures, I got to make sure they're there. But you just named somebody who wasn't there.
How many people do you have here that have Diamond Club paraphernalia on them?
That's not important.
Do you know? Are you asleep like you would be in a beautiful and affordable Casper mattress?
All right. Well, we're going to find out your fate next week, or we're going to find out Brian's fate, and it's going to be very interesting. So tune in next time on Diamond Club meets Journey Quest.
Man, if you're not watching the video, you are missing out on its artistry. It's Mozart on the keyboard, man.
YouTube.com/BBpedia videos. Check it.
Yeah, let's be clear. Mark Maron did not defend Diamond Club. He just did not know what Justin's lie was and why he was being implicated. All he knows is he died, being accused of something that he was not guilty of.
All I know is that he got murdered. That dude got straight up murdered.
By you.
You put a name on a list.
I mean, no, I didn't.
He wouldn't be murdered if you didn't write his name.
I did. Oh, stop it. All right, whatever. Hey, picks. Do we want to just talk about Arrival or?
Yeah, I got 2 picks though that aren't Arrival. Maybe I can loan one to one of you. Have either of you guys watched Ash versus Evil Dead?
No.
Haven't. No.
It's amazing. I signed up for the Starz 7-day trial through Amazon because all I wanted to do was show my kid the movie Big, directed by Penny Marshall, starring Tom Hanks. So I typed in Big, and it said, "Hey, you could pay money for this, or I don't know, you could watch it for free by clicking some buttons, bleep blop bloop, and you'll get a 7-day trial." And I was like, "Well, surely I'll be bored of Starz in 7 days." Then I discovered I went to go unsubscribe from Starz. Then I saw Ash versus Evil Dead. I was like, when everybody shows me their top movies or their top TV shows of 2015, Ash versus Evil Dead is the only one. I've seen Mr. Robot. I've seen, House of Cards. I've seen Westworld. That wasn't out yet. But whatever. I've seen all these other things. And I was like, well, let me watch Ash versus Evil Dead. And then it's like, well, let me watch one more. Then, I don't know, maybe let me watch one more. And then suddenly I'm on episode 8 of season 1. And I realize I'm now subscribed to Starz because I'm not going to unsubscribe, and it's now been 7 days. I enjoyed it immensely. It's great. It full on just continues the lore from the movies. He's in his, I assume, 60s, wearing a girdle, still trying to pound that, crush that lady parts. It's great. It's great.
It's been really amazing to see how far specifically comedy horror has come in the last year, between Ash versus the Evil Dead and Preacher. that
Yeah.
there is just this idea of like it's a genre that is, I think, like fairly underexplored in movies in general and kind of almost obsolete in terms of television. But you know, with the success of Walking Dead, horror in general is just something that people seem to have more interested in. Comedy horror, kind of that subgenre, which very often can be among the most fun elements of horror in general, are kind of having a moment right now, which is really rad.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
I want to check it. I think I got the pilot. They gave it away or something. I think I have that in like my iTunes or something. So I have to check that out. So, Justin, you have a pick?
I watched Atlanta. Atlanta was great. It is great. I have 2 episodes to go. Donald Glover is awesome, and I think that it is at its best when it gets absurd, as I think his writing tends to be. He does absurd very, very well because he's obviously a very smart writer and a great performer. I think all the actors are awesome, and I would buy a Paperboy album. So, but a double +1 to Atlanta.
Donald Glover. You know who'd be good to play?
Yeah, Lando.
I'll say Han Solo, but yeah, Lando works for me.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, if you want to stick to racial stereotypes, I was hoping for a more progressive young Han Solo, in which he used to be black, and then he's
For an extended Bib Fortuna.
yeah.
So my pick is going to be a pick that Bri picked, and we had a little discussion about it. And I don't want to get too spoilery because Justin hasn't seen it. A lot of you have not seen it, but highly recommend. And that is Arrival, not the Charlie Sheen movie called Arrival, which was really cool too about aliens. But this is the brand new one out there in movie theaters right now, starring the wonderfully talented
Amy Adams,
Jeremy Renner, and this was directed by the screenplay. Eric Hessier is fantastic, really well done. It was adapted from a story called Story of Your Life, and the direction. What's interesting about the direction is Denis Villeneuve, whose name I'm not pronouncing correctly, has got a great track record already for movies. He did Sicario, which was, you know, a highly acclaimed, Prisoners, Enemy, and he's just doing, like, he didn't try to push like the whole thing that he did Sicario. He is this talented director. He's got another little film coming out next year, Blade Runner 2017.
Oh wow!
So I'm super stoked. So Arrival deals with, it's an alien contact story, but it's got a very different, I would say it's got an interesting approach towards it. I thought the direction on it was fantastic because we've seen so many alien Arrival sort of movies of like where the aliens, the spaceships show up and all this. He knew this. He went into understanding that and how he was going to handle it in sort of a different way. And I thought it was the most human sort of element of it, and it felt extremely realistic.
The parts I loved the most about Arrival are all the things it didn't do. Like, for example, it didn't show that awkward first contact, because this is not the story of First Contact. It is the story of Amy Adams's character's involvement of it. And so we see her steeling herself to face the aliens for the first time, and then smash cut to her, you know, puking or whatever with nervousness and how bad was I? And then, you know, the comforting her saying like, well, you did better than the previous guy or whatever. You also didn't see the extremely tempting and all too easy archetype of the militaristic guy who's like, no, we've got to blow them all up because I'm wearing military fatigues. Yeah. And instead you saw a very reasoned, believable bureaucratic discussion where it's like, look, I can't sell this. Give me something I can work with because I'm with you. I don't want to blow these things up. I don't want to get evaporated by these guys. What do? I don't know how to talk about any of my criticisms without spoiling anything.
Well, we can say we're officially going to go into spoiler time right now, and then we can have a discussion about it. So we warned people last week we're going to see it, and we'd have a discussion this week. Cool. All right. Spoiler time. Spoiling.
That same conceit does wear a little bit thin when they so obstinately keep not giving you the entire story. it tricks my brain into saying like, okay, why are they not giving me the whole story? And then I begin to solve it as a puzzle. And in this case,
which whole part of the story?
well, I mean,
We're in spoiler territory. Don't worry.
yeah, sure. The nature of the story. Okay, the first 5 minutes, they show a kid born, raised, dying at the age of what looks like 16 or 17 of cancer. Amy Adams is the mom, and yet she doesn't age at all. And her character keeps saying, well, that's weird. Time is funny. That'll be important later. And then they skip around an awful lot in, fits and chunks. You're only getting a collage of various moments through this progression of indeterminate time, whether it's month, a year, 10 years, or whatever. And at some point, my puzzle-solving brain kicked in, and unfortunately, the big magic trick did not work on me, and I was sad about that because I love being fooled, and I don't know if it's just because I had read Slaughterhouse-5 and this idea of the past and the future are unchangeable. They're like mountains on the horizon. It's like they just are what they are, and you can know them, and it doesn't change anything. That sort of. About halfway through, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure she's remembering forward. And then when that big moment happened, it was less impactful for me. However, Bryce happened to be at the same showing, and it sounded like the magic trick worked very, very well for you, right?
Yeah, I felt surprised enough by. Part of me was thinking, man, it would be really weird if like they were doing some backwards. It's actually in the future. Like in my head, I was like writing that off, or just like I was aware of the possibility of it, but I did not consider it. And so even when that was sort of revealed in the end, I felt really like satisfied with that turn.
So last week we got into this discussion. It started because we were talking about the idea of what I think we actually an EM Drive discussion, the idea that you could have waves that are the longitude of them are so big they don't fit inside the universe, and you'd only see little fragmentary parts of that. And we're talking about, and that was started instead of a segue into like alien communications and the concept of time, and then elephants and the idea. And I was kind of alluding to sort of thing like we may not be able to talk with things because of their concepts of time is very, very different, right? So this is a thing that in my head, kind of, been kind of playing around with. And then when I went off to go see Arrival, at the very beginning, she kind of tells you this is sort of nonlinear. You're told that it's nonlinear, and then then they kind of move with this very morose sort of, introduction of her and the idea that you're thinking that she's dealing with the loss and stuff. And I quickly put all of the whole nonlinear thing behind me, and I got into the middle of the story. And I'm very guilty of letting my brain kind of race ahead and try to solve things. I would say that I was certainly cognizant of the idea that things could have been a different sequence, that we were moving towards, the point at which she met. Because like when she met him, and she talks about like, well, ask your father, the scientist. Part of me is like, oh, yeah, I think it's probably like, that's a future sort of thing. And the thing in my head, like, man, life seems so normal for them after alien contact. So that's going to be an interesting thing, is why is life so normal for them if that's the future thing? So I was on board the idea that like, yeah, that she's gonna go have the kid, and there's going to be some sort of time jumpy thing or whatever. But the way it came about, I loved, and the way that it was done was so much better than the expectation I had. That I kind of figured, part of me, I wasn't convinced, but I was kind of thinking like, I think we're going to something about the linearity of time. But the idea that it was that the way the hexapods functioned was that they had a universal sort of language that allowed you to see differently through time and backwards and forwards. And also that the premise here wasn't that you had a fate and you might as well give yourself up to it. The idea was that you're going to make this, and we don't know that you could avoid it. Her was like, no, like I will make this choice because I like this choice. I would rather have this choice, and not that she was compelled to do it. And that's, I thought, was a really cool kind of twist on it. It wasn't like, I have no free will. It's no, I have free will, but I'm going to choose, in my case, to make the same choices.
Yeah, and I do like that idea, and that is I think there's a number of people who, even when things have unfortunate consequences, it's like, well, if I had it to do all over again, I would, and so that's a real choice. By the way, the chat room's saying heptapods, not sextapods, because there were seven. Remember, seven knuckle fingers.
I thought I said heptapod.
No, you said sextapods. It's all right.
no
But so what did you think about the language itself as a written thing? I thought it was unfortunate that it just looked like coffee cup rings stains. I couldn't not see that. Well, and more importantly, I couldn't see a biological reason for that to be their written language. For example, if when you see human written language, you could tell that somebody picked up a stylus and fingers were used to carve out a thing or whatever. But this was like a weird mix. It was visual, but of some indeterminate ink substance that came out of split fingers. It was that floated in the air.
But I mean, that wasn't necessarily their basic language. That wasn't a language they created for kind of constructing. And that was the thing they got into, was like, this isn't necessarily a language about words. This wasn't a language. This was a kind of a constructed thing for the way that they think about. There's a really interesting article from Stephen Wolfram of Wolfram Mathematica, because he and his son were consultants on this, and getting into how much they had to make mathematics play into this. And how would you, the idea of the circle was the point to say it's not a linear thing. So the idea was that instead of a sentence as a beginning and an end, that was a big clue, was like, no, these circles, there's no start and end point. It's the whole thing is that, which I thought was
sure, but unfortunately the imagery that they used has artifacts of ink splatter, and it's like, why would you conjure a circle with artifacts of ink splatter to suspend in space? Did they originally used to write with ink splattering on the ground or on something else, and then they duplicated it in this floating thing, or what?
I didn't see that as ink splatter. I didn't see that. I didn't see that as. I mean, certainly they had to come up with some sort of aesthetically pleasing visual representation of that. But I mean, if I took a sound waveform and I put it in a circle, we're going to see, you could see it in certain ways, but that didn't. I liked it because it wasn't, often you'll have like, one, you get the alien stuff like, oh, their word for this is this. And it's like, well, that's making an assumption that they even, language functions the same. We don't even think it does with whales or other creatures. Like, I loved the fact that it was like, give up your expectations on language even being phonetic based, give it up on it even being, like letters being based on some sort of visual representation. Like you look at our letters and how they all can be traced back to something else. Like, no, there's some sort of method for trying to encode a lot of information inside of here that, and I just liked, I thought it was so much more well thought out than anything I'd ever seen, in trying to imagine a really alien way of communicating.
I do like the fact that it spurred a bunch of questions in my mind. I liked less that it led to conflicts. Like I think it could have been, I don't want to say fixed or whatever, but it's like if they poked their tentacles at a device and a device displayed this, then in my mind it would have been like, oh, their language evolved from using their tentacles to draw these splattery ink-stained pictures, and then they're doing a representation of it, just as the whiteboard is not the first way that humans did. It was originally, tablets and so on. They're using technology to display it, but the idea that they split the end of a tentacle, which would indicate a biological...
Yeah, but she wrote like the same way inside that space too, if I remember correctly. I think that if I was using a gesture-based interface thing and I'm reaching at, if I touch my iPad and I start screeching across the screen and you watch, paint follow my finger, I think somebody 40 years ago would think that...
Correct. But the difference is that you are using technology. In this, the difference, to make it an effective parallel, you would have to point your finger forward. Your finger would have to split into 7 mini fingers, and you'd have to squirt out floating ink in the shape of that, which to me was just an extra step that I don't know was necessary. I think it was distracting to me.
The only people on the planet hung up on that.
Okay. Well, and granted also, like, I took a semester of languages of science fiction where we spent a whole semester discussing, figuring out, the relationship between biology and the way we form languages and the way languages are dissected and decoded among humans, and so maybe I was just over equipped for this moment,
I mean,
or
maybe,
distractingly
but I mean that was
equipped.
part of what I thought the brilliance of this was, is that they wanted to try to do the most, and it was in a very way, going from the understanding we understand about language construction from a very human point of view to the idea of pure mathematics, and trying to find this a very plausible, very interesting alien approach to it, which in some things may not make sense to us, and there may be things that are artifacts of their own culture. They do this, whatever, but like I don't agree with the premise of the movie. I don't agree with the science of the movie. I don't agree with any of these things. I mean, most of these things I could take it apart. I loved it as a movie. I thought it was so well presented. I thought they thought deeply about these things. I don't agree necessarily what their answers are, but I thought they did a wonderful job of asking questions, and and I thought, the direction is beautiful, and I go like, yeah, I don't think this is possible. I don't think this is likely. I don't think these are the choices I would make, but man, it made sense in the construct of the movie. So I was like, it's like when I watch faith-based films, like I'm like, I don't believe this, but I think this was so well done. I'm on board.
Right on. Cool.
So don't see it, guys.
No, don't do that.
I'm not putting that on you. I was just being in general.
No.
Please.
Yeah, I liked it very, very much. It was.
I know you liked it. I'm saying we both liked it, and we're having a discussion about it because it's got that much stuff to talk about.
Yeah. No. It's great. Also, if you haven't seen it, pity that you heard this discussion.
Yeah. I would say that the weakest part for me, by the way, was like, wow, that feels like, it was like in Westworld when, you find out that so-and-so's the boss. You're like, wow, that's a CW twist. And here it was, the military, thing that they're doing. It's like, wow, that seems kind of, everything else on this is so well thought out. That seems so cliche. And then you're like, yeah, that wasn't in the original story. I'm like,
wait,
okay.
When you say the military twist, you mean the psycho person tries to blow up the aliens? Yeah. I've already erased that from the movie. That was a silly and unnecessary vestige stapled onto the story.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, that was great. Like, there's so few movies about the subject that it have to feel like Contact right there, and it was just, the psycho, the right-wing psycho or whatever, religiously motivated psycho plants the bomb in the device for Contact to destroy it. And it's like, we've seen that. You can have another threat in another interesting way. I think that was frustrating because it was like, this was the least smart thing about that movie in my point of view.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Spoilers over.
Although there's no way for you to know that because you probably skipped all this stuff. So I guess we should wrap it up then.
Yes. It's been weird.
Boom.
Hey, good show. Do you guys need a break? Beverage break?
I just need to grab a soda.
Okay.
And to sneeze some more.
Sure. Boy. Everybody was sick today, it seemed like.
Well, I was. You know what?
Me, healthy as a horse.
Do you get that when you're under sleep? Like for some reason, I always dream and sneeze when it's like if I get less than 4 hours sleep, it's just all shaky.
No, not really. I get more like an achy thing. Let's see what we've got on the show, but oh man, Showbot got a little bit of an upgrade.
Oh damn!
We got Weird World things, Gravity 2 the documentary, Elon Musk fanboy virus, the Muskrats, Diamond Cult, RIP R.I.P. Mark Maron, Goblimented Reality, Musk Up or Shut Up, Musknet, Bitch I Might Be. I smell macaroni and cheese.
Uh-oh. By the way, for the record, no jury tonight. Jury, we're going to do a trial where jury is going to move to Monday mornings.
Whoa.
And we're going to see how that works.
Would that be after Hotline Monday or before?
Before. It would be noon Eastern. And then the newly debuting 1-900 Wrestling will be after that at 1 Eastern. Then Hotline Monday at 5 Eastern.
Wow.
So that'll be the Monday slate now.
Is there a name for the new show with you and Brett that you put out?
No,
No. Okay.
we do not know what that is aside from, Brett's spending a lot of time at home and we might as well do a podcast.
I started playing Abduction, the new adventure game from Cyan Worlds, the guys who made Myst.
Yeah.
And
Good.
say what?
Good?
It is. I think it is. It's one of those things where when I get stuck, like the couple of times that I've gotten stuck so far is because I literally just did not see a thing, or I missed one little thing, which is a weird sort of it's a weird separation from like an adventure game like that to like a puzzle game like The Witness. Like
Yeah.
there's logic to the puzzles you have to solve, but there's also an exploration element that is like incredibly vital.
Gotcha.
But it's cool, and it's a game from those Myst guys, so there's a lot of like world building and writing and reading.
There's a lot there.
There's a lot.
Sweet.
Yeah. Ba-ba-ba-da-ba-doo. Ow. Okay, I'm gonna do this. All right, you guys want to do a little after things?
Yo.
I did send you an email before the stream, Andrew.
Got it open right now.
Okay. Let
Oh,
me do
damn.
that. By the way, if you're watching, you can get after things early. Patreon.com/weirdthings. Did I archive it? Oh, I think I did. Cool. Yes. All right. Well, we good to go?
We're the
Yo.
best to go.
Righty.
All right. Well, take it away in 3, 2.
Welcome to the After Things podcast. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Brian Brushwood,
That's true.
and Justin Robert Young.
Hello.
Gentlemen, let's start off with a question from a listener. And just so everybody knows, we love to get your questions, and this is what we exist for. We try to give our advice from our own narrow, limited points of view, and we know that we could be tremendously wrong. So if everything falls apart and fails, whoops. So beginning right now with a question from Ken. Ken's been a regular listener. Love Ken. Ken wants to know, what do you guys think about advertising? I may be wrong, but it seems as though you've built the Diamond Club without a penny spent in advertising. If you were to wake up in a world where the Diamond Club didn't exist, which actually, if you're paying attention to Journey Quest, could happen, and no one had ever heard of your names, would you buy ads? If so, where and how? Same question applies to you, Andrew. After you built a career as a magician, it seemed like you just decided to become an author one day. How did you convince people to read your early books? For context, I have a humble podcast, which I've brought up before, Today's Tea with Kenny P, and I'll buy the odd ad on podcasts I enjoy because I want to support them, and I figure there's more value in it for me than supporting their patron. But I don't notice any spikes after I buy an ad, just the slow, gradual path I seem to get anyway. Maybe my ads suck. I try and think about how and why I start to listen to new podcasts, and it's always either a podcast from someone I enjoyed in some other work or an unpaid recommendation from someone with similar taste. Gentlemen?
Man, lots to go through. I would say that if there's a unifying thread between your author career and the development of Diamond Club is that we built it first and tried to seduce an audience, I guess, or attract an audience to it. Like we did it without the expectation of making any money for a very, very long time before we opened up a ability for people to contribute. Advertising is a very, or tends to be a very, very ineffective way, or not ineffective, I'm sorry, inefficient way to get your message out, right? Like,
Agreed.
If I want to reach people, the best way is for me to create a show that consistently creates a certain kind of content that attracts a certain set of viewers, and then everybody very excitedly tunes in to listen to what I have to say, and I'm talking to exactly the right people with exactly the right relevant message at exactly the right time. Advertising isn't that. And this is coming from somebody who's finally dipping a toe into advertising, because there are a lot of people who know who I am, what scam stuff is, but for whatever reason don't happen to every Friday tune in to listen to our latest release on scamstuff.com. So we're trying to reach these people, and so we're buying Facebook ads. And it's worth it, but it's only barely worth it. You know what I mean? Like, if we spend $50, we can expect to make $75 profit. But that is still a case of me reaching people who otherwise wouldn't hear it, but who already know who I am and are already primed to be in the right place to do it. So I don't know. I would say advertising for us, or for me in general, has been the avenue of, I don't want to say last resort, but it's been the least effective way to get the word out to those who, for whatever reason, aren't keeping up on stuff from our regular podcasts.
Yeah. I think there's two elements to this. Number one, there's, the idea, and I'll let Andrew discuss how, the one day where you just decided to become an author. But in general with content stuff, you got to be very careful. Advertising is a very precarious rope bridge, and the longer that you try to stretch it, the less effective that it will be. If there is a place in which, like, let's say Weird Things or Night Attack or something like that would advertise, it would probably be like on Scam School. Like, it would be, getting ads specifically on that channel if we could, or we wanted to spend the money, because then at least we know that there is something that is watched on a regular basis, that is primarily internet based, and that a lot of people have an affinity for Brian. And so you can string that little rope bridge from Scam School to one of these podcasts if we wanted to do that. That would at least make some kind of sense. Otherwise, man, I don't know. Like, because I don't know if I'm listening to a wrestling podcast that I like, if somebody just advertises another wrestling podcast, that I need another one. If really the best form of advertising that I've heard is just when there's a celebrity or somebody that I already have a relationship with that has a podcast that I just don't know about, right? Like, I don't know if subject matter advertising on anything for a podcast works.
Well, and I would say even beyond advertising, it's an organic cross-promotion opportunity when two people on the same podcast network, have an ad at the beginning where it's like, hey, it's me, the guy you love from that wrestling event, and you're listening to that other wrestling event. So I bet you know me. Well, I'm also on the network. My show's like this guy's show, only we focus more on tacos. Come listen. Like, I don't even know how effective that is. I mean, I assume it's worth doing, but
I'm going to jump in and say it starts with product. It starts with what you're doing. If what you're doing is so niche, you're not going to see explosive growth. Like, okay, Ken, like, I'm not listening to your show. Like, I like you, but a tea podcast, I have no interest in. Now but there are people who probably do. What is the percentage of the population that has an interest in a podcast about tea in this? And I read the description, like, I don't quite know what it is. I know it involves tea. You've talked about it before. I don't know who your audience is. So, like, you have to, when we started years ago, it was 10 years ago, Justin and I started iTricks.com, a magic news blog. We knew exactly who our audience was. We knew what they were reading. We knew what they were doing online. And we said, here's a way we can serve these people, because we can do daily magic news, which they're not getting. There was nobody in that space. There was nobody stupid enough to try to get into that space, because it was going to be resource intensive. But we said, we will go in there and we could bring in my audience. I already had a mailing list of, email list from people who bought my magic products. So I could say, hey, everybody, go to this news site. And then we could go to a few other magic sites. And, we were building over 1,000 daily visitors, and we could build podcasts in there because there was a clear niche for there. Brian and doing Scam Schools, like, There are people who want to learn how to do cool stuff and do magic tricks. There's a clear audience for that. There's a clear path for that. And Brian could go online and he could say, okay, I can do an output that's higher than other people. I can do quality that's better than what everybody else is doing. And I'm not just another person in a sea of thousands raising your arm going, look at me, look at me. So you need to make sure that your podcast or your product is not just a super, super tiny niche, because guess what? It's never really going to grow explosively. There's just not enough people out there that have an interest in that. So that's step number one. Does on paper, does it fit? Two, is the quality and everything there? Because you might have a problem of like, I might get a lot of people who dip into, but if they just go, man, not for me, and leave, then they're going to stay. If I can get a lot of attention to my books, but if people pick up the book and get in the first page and it's not for them, and that's the thing I run into. Like, I have a Twitter audience that largely is from people who like me from my TV show. They're not necessarily book readers, and they may love me, but if I'm like, hey, read this book, they're like, hey, what's over here on Snapchat?
Go back to punishing people using the powers of magic.
Yeah, and that's like, I've had to, I knew that going into it, because I talked to like people like, oh, like you publish, like, we love you got a big Twitter follow. I'm like, yeah. If I say I'm going to be on TV tomorrow night, these people are excited about it. If I say I've got a new book, it's a different context. So, yeah, I don't think I think that, and I don't think it's always helpful to say just make the product great. I knew when I started writing, the first thing I wrote was a novella called The Grendel Shadow. It was a science fiction story. I chose that because I knew at that time the Weird Things audience liked science fiction, right? We're always doing science fiction picks. So if I'm like, hey guys, I got a 99-cent short story, a science fiction story, it was the perfect sort of segue for that audience. I did not go, hey guys, I got a really cool mystery thriller that has nothing to do with science fiction or monsters or stuff.
And we put the first chapter at the end of the podcast. Like we
put the first, and it fit. If we did something like, we could do that. We might do that again with, Blackfall or something like that, because people now understand how that brand fits in. But at the beginning, like, it had to be on topic for what we're doing. And then so people got into it, got great reviews, did Public Enemy Zero, which was science fiction, but more thriller, not far out there. So the same audience could come on board from there. And then from Public Enemy Zero to Angel Killer, which was my biggest seller yet, it was a big jump. And I'm telling you, like, not everybody came with me from Public Enemy Zero and Weird Things to Angel Killer. That had to kind of find its own momentum, and it helped. But Angel Killer, actually, I could see the blip from everybody within the Weird Things audience and the Diamond Club audience with Angel Killer. And then I watched that thing sort of just flatline. And then 3 months later, pick up as it went into another audience. So,
let's do this. Let's look at his question as he wrote it, which is, he has a podcast, Today's Tea with Kenny P. I'm going to assume that that the question's really not about how good are advertising. I would say, well, first of all, I'll tell you this. If you want to make a successful podcast, I do not recommend that you buy advertising. Advertising will not force a community to happen. What you want to do is create a community underneath you. And part of what that means is showing up regular, on time, with quality content every single week, or at least as close to quality content as you're able to manufacture. See Night Attack. But if you want to reach other people, then let's assume there exists a community of people who are tea enthusiasts, in which case what you do is you find out what are all the most popular tea podcasts, and you don't go to them asking if you could show up for free or offering them money in exchange for a slice of their time. Instead, what you do is you go to them and say, what can I offer you? Or don't even do that. You can, if you hear them talking about a thing, record a tight 30-second package of you saying, hey guys, it's so-and-so. I heard you talking about blah, 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 and it led me to the question of this. When it comes between oolong and whatever, tea, which one wins in a fight? Thanks, and whatever. By creating content, you create value for them. That's something that they can easily slot into their stuff. And then after doing that a few times, you're like, hey, can I join you guys for a podcast? I have some really strong opinions about this new, Earl Grey Black. And then you show up and you are entertaining and you bring something to the table then all of a sudden, that little plug at the end, because that's the difference, is you don't show up knocking on their door and asking listeners to come to your other nightclub. It's like, man, I just got to this nightclub. This is the nightclub I like to hang out with. So instead, you show up and you're one of the best dancers on the floor, and you're like, hi, now if you want to get more of this, I'm over here, and people come along. And assuming the show is about more than just tea, then that's fine. Figure out who your audience is and figure out how to reach them in an organic way where you provide value first. Because understand, advertising does not provide value. Nobody listens to an ad and says, well, I'm better for having known that. Or very, very rarely does that happen. Advertising can be a classy way to ask a favor to cash out some of the goodwill that you built up.
I mean, there are cases where, you can have markets that are under advertised too. Like we knew, like with iTricks, we knew that magicians actually liked magic. They liked to know what's new in magic, and they wanted to know what was coming out there. They weren't getting enough news about new tricks and new stuff like this. And so that was kind of a rare instance of like movie news, things like that are things where ad and content sort of blends together, but that's rare, as Brian points out. And I would say that you have to think about what's your discoverability footprint. If your product exists solely in iTunes as a podcast and you're waiting for somebody to type T to discover you, ain't never going to happen. We would look at, like with iTricks, we would look at Google searches and things like that for topics to see how often, or we do Google AdWords, and you see how often a keyword's likely to come up. You'd be surprised at, there may be 7 billion people on the planet, but chances are 7 billion of them don't care the entire week about the thing you're trying to push. So you need to increase your footprint. Do you do a blog? Do you blog post on it? Do you do weekly blog posts talking about this stuff? Because that's discoverability. Somebody who's really into tea may not even be thinking about a goddamn podcast on tea, may have no idea that it exists. But if you blog about tea, then you increase the number of people that come to you, because YouTube is great for discoverability. iTunes is not. iTunes is a silo. It's really hard unless you're in a broad category like science and they go, oh, here's a top science podcaster. Unless you're in the top category there, ain't nobody ever going to find you. So you need to figure out, how do you create more content? So I would say blog about it. If you could do Kenny's Tea of the Week pick on YouTube, and I know that's to ask you to do a video thing. If you want to bring people into what you do, this is what you got to do, is you've got to send up flags all over the place and arrows pointing to what you're doing. And that's not ads. That's creating content that leads people to where you're trying to direct their attention.
I even think that might be like, in my mind, there is like an evolutionary chart of ways that you communicate on the internet. And some of them are very chaotic and some of them are very inert, but they are very sticky, right? So podcasting to me is, next to live streaming, maybe the most inert but sticky. You can fall in love with these personalities and you will ride with them forever. However, it's in the burbs, man. It takes you a little bit to get there. The downtown are the chaotic platforms. And I would say for something like tea, like YouTube videos and blogs, which I think at one time were the most chaotic, are now maybe even they're in the middle between it. Like Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, like highly discoverable places where you can immediately make an impression, and that's it. Now that's hard to build a living off those. Some people, only the most successful, build a living on the most chaotic, right? And that can fleet at any second. But if you want to generate attention, you want to introduce yourself to a lot of people who are very interested in finding out what you do, then to me, you lead them down that breadcrumb path, right? And you go from very chaotic, chaotic things to very inert and sticky things. And so you have them go from, oh my God, I laughed at this guy's Twitter joke, or I love that this guy takes amazing pictures of the tea that he's drinking and it looks great and they have themes and it's funny and it's punny or something, to, oh, well, he links this long funny thing, a blog in his bio of his Instagram, to, oh my God, I love this guy's blog. He's got a podcast and it's even funnier. But it's like, you got to walk everybody down, or else you're just putting a sign up in downtown saying, hey, there's a great party that happens 40 minutes away in the suburbs. if you're not there, man, that's up to you. It's great. Trust me.
So Bryce points out that also Kenny's podcast comes out only once every 3 to 6 weeks. Can't say it enough. If you want to make it in the podcast game, regularity is key. Every single week.
5% of winning is showing up.
Yeah.
75.
Correct.
And if not higher.
Well, and especially like understand the reasons you tell your stories are not necessarily the reasons people listen to your story. You could tell your story because you're passionate about tea, and people can appreciate that you're passionate about tea, but ultimately they want you to show up because it's Tuesday morning and I'm on that stair stepper for 45 minutes and I need somebody to hang out with me and keep me thinking about anything other than the fact that I'm stepping on stairs or I have that long commute or whatever. I expect you to give me an aha moment. I expect you to make a clever metaphor or tell an anecdote that I can pinch and make my day interesting later in the day. Think in terms of those practical things that people need and why they go to podcasts, whether it's to pass the time, whether it's to learn something, whether it's to be entertained and laugh out loud. Now, having said that, there are exceptions to the rule. You can be a Dan Carlin and do hardcore history that only comes out 2 to 3 times a year, but each of those are an exquisitely crafted audiobook that are unique in and of themselves. That's a very difficult game to play, and it's wonderful that Dan Carlin's able to do that. If you're not Dan Carlin, and, pro tip, I'm not Dan Carlin. I don't think any of us here on the panel are Dan Carlin. Absent that, you got to show up every single week.
Ken, and I would say that sometimes too that you can be passionate about something, and we think that it needs to be in this form, and sometimes it can be in a much more simple form. History and pictures. The history and pics. The Twitter feed. Which was kind of hilarious because it's done by, it turned out it was done by like high school kids who didn't quite know their history, which made it even more amusing. But, it was this neat fact digestible thing. And like Justin pointed out, like if you created a bite size, like if you did a photo of a tea thing, a neat tea photo with a tea fact, an interesting thing about tea facts, I know so many people that would subscribe to that thing on Instagram because they love tea and they got this really cool little tea fact thing with a cool photo. Paste that fact onto the photo because you have to understand that people will not, if they want to recirculate it, they're not going to cut and paste your full message. They're just going to take the simplest reducible part of that to it and push it out there. It's like when you want to put out a message on Twitter, like when it's really important for me, I do a photo with my text on the photo. But if you started doing that with your little T-Facts, I guarantee you might find you quickly get an audience for that, and then it's a great way to push people to your podcast. Because then you can put like, hey, T-Fact podcast available here as one of those things and build your own channel.
So I guess really, I think if there's a universal takeaway from everything we're saying is that I would suggest that the idea of advertising as a platform is only available to your billion-dollar mega brands. If you're craft, yes, you can make advertising your platform to get the word out about new macaroni and cheese.
Like they have people they pay to figure out specifically how to get over that marginal, because if it only makes 3% return, that's colossal for them because they can keep doing that over. And they have people dedicated to figure out how to do this. They have people who spend all day studying how to do this stuff, and that's not available to us.
Right. So if your goal is to build up your core platform, then your game plan should not be to advertise your way towards a bigger core platform. Instead, what you do is you should guest on 5 other podcasts, right? And each of those becomes a miniature platform. Like, hi, I'm the guy who shows up on Tuesdays on the morning stream, and I talk about tea for 5 seconds, and then off I go.
That's my corner. Seriously, don't touch Tuesdays.
Okay, all right. But my point is that by carving out a piece of somebody else's platform, it becomes a miniature platform that people care about. They're like, oh, it's Tuesday. I'm excited to hear about. It's Wednesday. I'm excited to hear about teas. And then that little plug at the end where it's like, by the way, I talk about this every week over at. And by the way, it's got to be every single week.
Or it's got to be regular.
Yes, or whatever it is, right? Whatever you're
or when it comes to Scott, I mean, like, he does those Tom too does a lot of those blind trailers on his show. People just send him finished content and he'll just tack it on the end of the show. It'll just be like a legal brief or something like that, or some little like non-related content. Like there's a lot of stuff you can do. I mean, I guess, but here's my point. If all you're doing is going from suburb to suburb, asking for other people to come to your other suburb, you're only going to have X amount of success. If you want to, like, if you are making this your living, right, you really got to go out there and build social media. I mean, listen, when I quit my job, I realized that I had to do Snapchat. I had to understand what I liked about Snapchat because I talked to Ali Spagnola and she was like, no, it is the most engageable platform I've ever been a part of. And she's somebody that's thought a lot about it, right? And has brought many of her tips and tricks from the Himalayas to many of your favorite podcasters. This is something that I had to learn. Why? Because it was going to bring me either a new level of accessibility to people who already know who I am, that want and can be activated in different ways, or it's going to be, it's not great for discoverability, but it is great for engagement. But like Twitter, Instagram, all that kind of stuff, like you Facebook, like you got to realize that like these are the chaotic environments in which you can grow your audience. But the question is, in that busy downtown world, how do you appeal to those that would like your product? And that is all to say, we can go right back to the very beginning. You gotta have a product that you are pumped about, that you are really happy about. This is the crux of my you have a tiny podcast that nobody listens to and it's the best thing that could possibly happen to you talk, is just if your product ain't ready, then the worst thing you could do is get it out in front of a jillion people.
Oh, hot damn, dude. Yeah, the inverse. I think your talk is exactly the inverse of my, you need a safe place to be bad so that you can become good. Like, if nobody's listening, great. It means you have all the tension, all the reasons to show up and do your best, and none of the detriment of people disliking your stuff and calling you out.
Yeah, because it's the last thing you want. Last thing you want is for everybody on Earth to listen to your show and then be like, well, this sucks. And then you would go back a year later and say, oh my God, if I'd only gotten that jillion people to listen to it now that the show's better. And it's like, that's be careful what you wish for, listenership in podcasting. Again, this is the burbs. It's about who is there. Not a lot of people that need to be there. Brian and I are well, probably me more than Brian, because Brian's got another vehicle that's way larger. But like Night Attack, my career is living proof, man. You can make a living on 12,000 people that listen to you regularly.
Dude,
which is
and by the way, even my bigger platform is minuscule. I was talking to a very famous YouTuber, somebody who has 6 million followers. And I was describing, what I do to maximize, benefit from the audience that we've grown. And he's like, well, I forgive me, Brian, but the numbers you're telling me, it's like you're able to make a living and make this kind of money only on that few followers, that few subscribers. And it's like, yes, but you got to be smart. You can live. The volume is the same whether you're an inch wide or and a mile deep versus an inch deep and a mile wide. It's the same amount of volume, and it's a matter of, building up that kind of deep personal relationship with your audience.
Yeah. Although, does that person with 6 million have their own store? Because I feel like if you have 6 million and you have your own store, then you can understand.
Well, this was me trying to explain to that person with 6 million subscribers, like, hey, seriously. It's a giant pain in the ass, but make a store.
Because if I can understand if it's like only on YouTube revenue, you can't make a living, right? It's
right.
It's everything
and
else
sponsorships and all that and all that other stuff, right?
That's part of it too. It's like, I don't know if people realize how hard you guys work. And like Brian, like you started scam stuff because you're like, you've got an audience, you've got people out there, but if you were going to, try to raise your 9 children, on YouTube revenue alone.
Oh, no, it's a joke. Do you realize, let me pull back the curtain just a little bit. There's a lot to be really, really proud of, because 2 months after we launched the Modern Rogue channel, we, today, as we are doing this, we're going to cross over. Here, in fact, let me refresh this. We are now at 49,903 subscribers. So by tomorrow morning, we'll cross over 50,000 subscribers. We'll be halfway to the silver play button. Today also happens to be the day that we're going to cross over 1 million views online, which is also very exciting.
That's amazing.
Friday was our all-time highest YouTube revenue day. All time. You want to know what we made?
What'd you make?
$103.
Oh, shoot. Balling at the Taco Bell. Balling at the Taco Bell.
Which, again, in your mind, I need you to wrap around the fact that we have 4 on the production team, 2 hosts. So that means that day, if we spread it out evenly, everybody made almost $20. And also, that was a record day because that was a new release day. The day before that, we made, hold on, let me give you real numbers here. There we go. The day before, we made $17.85. So that's almost 1 soft taco a piece.
So, what's interesting, though, is it's a thing to think about, in the words of our president-elect, that social media is worth more than money in some ways. Of course, if you don't have money, that's not really helpful. But if the ability that when you have, like, sometimes, like, I have all these people listen to what I say, how do I translate into money? Well, yeah, it can be tricky, but the thing is that sometimes just being able to have, like, a wide engagement with people in itself has a lot of value, I love the fact that no matter what time of day it is, if I'm bored, I can pop onto Periscope and I can talk to people,
Yep.
I can throw a dumb question out on Twitter and I will get a reply to that, and that's got a lot of value. And that's the thing you have to think about these things, is sometimes it's like, I was at a party last night for a friend doing a book launch, and I was explaining, like, listen, like, 1 million followers is great, but if you have 100 people that will jump and hop on board, we need to get something done, that's even more useful. So
Heck yeah, man.
All right. One last twisted, stupid metaphor when it comes to people who are following your product. Everybody that you attract on social media is like Penelope Cruz in Vanilla Sky. Kind of flighty, might not hold on forever, but very exciting and can come into your life at any time.
God,
People that listen to your podcast are, what's her face? Cameron Diaz. If you don't show up every time they expect you to, they will not feel that they will feel bad. They will feel angry. There will be a problem. Like, the most I have ever come into conflict with my audience was when, after doing 8 hours of live broadcasting on diamondclub.tv for the election, I didn't, and telling everybody that Monday was the last regular politics episode, that I went a week, actually a little bit over a week because we changed days of when we were going to do it. After doing 3 episodes a week, we went like a little over a week until I did the next episode. And people were like mad, like angry, that I wasn't there, because they were used to me doing it 3 days a week. And my body made a promise, and I wasn't there. And like, so if you're doing it every 3 to 6 weeks,
open your eyes.
No, your car's going off the side of that freeway more often than not, man.
Yeah, I would leave that message on Justin's voicemail if I didn't hear from him. Go, your body makes a promise. Not at all creepy.
No, not at all.
Hey, man,
gentlemen?
I got a pick. You guys want to talk picks?
Shoot.
I'm kind of sad this showed up in After Things, because I actually think that in a different episode of Weird Things, it would have made a wonderful 30-minute discussion. But hot damn, I tried out the brand new Google Earth VR app. Justin, have you tried this yet?
I have not, no.
You guys know Google Earth, right? It's been around, 15 years or so? This idea that you can fly around to places in a 2D desktop environment, and it looks delightful. It is a different beast when it is in 3D, and it's your body flying around to these places, and it's the real world. I've shown it to a few people, and one of the most amazing things to me is how after doing the initial tutorial and being really amazed at like, wow, I feel like a giant. Wow, I feel like I'm flying. Wow, this is the Earth. Wow, I can control time and all that stuff. The first thing everybody does is go find their home. And it was utterly delightful. This weekend I had my friend Gordon, who people have heard me talk about several times before, but he showed me his house with great pride, took me all the way around, was able to point to stuff in the backyard, explain, well, this is, before we put the whatever up. I put Mitsula in there. Chris Minton, first thing he did, showed me his house, took me straight there, explained, well, this is before I put the hammock here and this is where I hang out and all that. I myself, all alone in the house, the first thing I did after finding my house was I was like, oh man, I wonder what my parents' river house looks like. They had it for 10 years, 15 years. And so I go and found it, and I found the exact spot on the deck, and it was out in the boonies. So the 3D stuff wasn't there, but the topology was correct. So as I sat down on the deck, the hills were right and the river was right in front of me. And I set it, the sun to sunset, and I'm like, son of a bitch, this is exactly sunset. This is how I spent my 20s. And then it's like I whipped it over to sunrise, and I'm like, wow. All of a sudden I feel like I'm holding, a coffee waiting to go barefoot water skiing. What's that?
Feel like I'm hungover.
Yeah, exactly, right? I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm about to go water skiing with my dad. And when I took it off, it was so profound. I felt like I'd visited a place that it was deeply emotional. It was utterly wonderful, and I'm amazed that they don't play up, maybe because it's a promise that they can't keep for everyone, but for some reason they don't really play up the personal connection to the Earth that you get out of this thing. But it's truly extraordinary. It's
almost as if Google as a company doesn't quite understand human emotion.
Oy, you're right.
I will reinforce, like, what's cool about that is that does like the full like head movement, like everything, right? Like,
it's room scale. You get to walk around, you could sit down, and in fact, I did. I sat down on my parents' river house deck from back when in the day.
I'm gonna make this point again because it's not made enough in VR. Room scale, the ability of not just have your head on a fixed gimbal thing, but when you move around there, it is a quantum leap in the way you're able to connect to VR. And that is when if you just do the regular Google Gear, put it on, like, oh yeah, this is really cool. It's like, that ain't VR, darling.
Yeah.
That ain't it.
It's Train Enter Station. Listen, Train Enter Station was really, really rad when everybody first saw it, and we can all understand, but that ain't
because when you have that feedback of your body, your whole body moving, not just where you're turning your head, but your whole body going up or down.
Yep.
It clicks. It's real at that point, and that was the difference to everything I'd done before. Oculus, I'm like, oh, that's cool. My sense memory of the stuff I've done in room scale VR is totally different. It is real, and like Brian, I believe you. That had to feel like you're flying, like you're Superman or whatever, and just it was a real experience for you.
Yeah, and
is that in Steam?
Yes, it is, and it's free, I believe.
Yeah, it's for the HTC Vive.
Yeah, HTC Vive, and this is now like the most powerful thing. Like yes, everybody should start with Tilt Brush, but this should be your follow-up if they're not into games, because this is an extraordinary experience.
Sweet. My pick is an audio book, and I'm going to mention I continue to have a love affair with my muter, Amazon Alexa. Just for listening to audiobooks, I'm consuming a lot more. Audible should just give these out to people because like I'm now like increasing my credits, because now anytime I want to listen to something I can. So I've been burning through books. I am in the middle of a pick by Mr. Justin Robert Young. I think that's his name, suggested this. And that is a book, the Marvel Comics, The Untold Story by Sean Howe. There was a great book that came out like in the 90s about kind of the Marvel Comics wars, whatever, about that, just the courtroom battles and stuff. This is a deep, deep, deep dive history, kind of on the scale of still my favorite one of all time is how Star Wars conquered the universe. But Marvel Comics, The Untold Story, it's available on Audible, available in paperback, etc. Great detail about Marvel Comics. So midway or partially, I'm still think I'm in the 70s on that.
Man, I would love to take credit. I cannot for tipping you off on that, because I'm gonna download that for sure.
Oh man, maybe I tapped into the future.
Yeah.
You were just remembering the future. I'm sure it's fine.
It happens. So anyhow, that's my pick.
You want to know what? I'm going to pick something that I'm going to use a lot over the next 2 days, and that is MailChimp. Here's an advertising method that does work and pay dividends. Mailing lists.
Oh my God. And that is no lie, dude. That is the final stage. That's how you know you have somebody on your team forever, is once they're on your email list. If you think you're like, oh, well, I could rely on them for blank, it's like, no, you can't. Not until they're on your email list. That means you're actually blood brothers.
Yeah. So a couple big mailings that are going to go out today or tomorrow. And then 2 days after that, one of them will be for stickers or DIAF. Got a brand new pack that is ready to roll. It's going to be the big holiday one, and we got to send out that email. That'll go out on Monday. And then on Wednesday, we're going to put out our big email for the Contender with all the stuff that we're doing over the holidays and all of our Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals. But, this is it's a resource that I often find myself a little frustrated by, because it sometimes feels like it is a tool built for somebody that is doing a different thing than I am. But I mean, you can't argue with the results. The difference between the Contender being in debt and the Contender not being in debt, which is thankfully where we are now, was totally turned around on us understanding exactly what our relationship to our mailing list should be.
Congratulations, by the way. That's it. You realize that you had that love that was a mile deep, right?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have a ton of people, but you flip everybody that's there on Kickstarter, and you flip everybody that's bought the game that is on Shopify, allowed themselves to accept marketing, and you toss it right there on the mailing list, and you pop it out, and you realize that, hell, there's a lot of people. We had been told that most games don't really survive beyond a year. That you see whatever you're selling in your pre-sale, and then that's pretty much it. People move on because they always want the new hotness. Thankfully, we have an audience that wants and repeatedly buys new content from us, and are very enthusiastic about the game. And that's something that we only know and we're only able to translate into cash, thanks to our mailing list and the way that we handle that as MailChimp.
That's awesome.
I'm going to give you, our listeners out there, some thoughts on this. MailChimp, when I was working on Author Page to make it very easy for authors to sort of talk to people, one of the things I was going to do is build our own email system, because I thought, MailChimp's kind of hard to use. It could be easier. But then the thing I stepped back and I realized is MailChimp gives you you can get a free account. I think it's like 500 people or something.
Is that Tiny Letter?
Well, no, I think MailChimp has their own, but then, they bought Tiny Letter, but I think that they have, if we go to the pricing, what's the MailChimp pricing? Let's see what the up to 2,000 subscribers for free a month. Okay. You can do, that's amazing. That's fantastic. So you can have up to 2,000 subscribers a month on MailChimp. There's no reason not to start building that up. And if you want to do unlimited, it starts at $20. Their pricing is, I think it's, if you're using it right. The frustrating thing about MailChimp, and it's one of those things, because it's like they've created a great tool for marketers and people to use that. And if you're Brian and Brian's team and you know how to go craft these letters and do that, when you first do it, it's very intimidating. And also, if you know that every time you want to send out an email, you got to spend an hour doing it, you tend not to do it. There is a secret shortcut. It's not secret, but we'll call it a secret shortcut that you can do to make your life so much easier. You can create a MailChimp account, and then you can say, hey, I want to just do plain text emails by sending them to a mailing address, which is one of the ways I send out stuff for our weird list. When I have something interesting or weird, I do it from my phone. I'm just sitting in bed. I see something interesting. I click send to the weird list, and then it sends me back a link. Say, do you want to send this? I say yes. It gives you a secret email address that you can email links to, or a whole thing. Like, I will send on my email list, my Andrew Main list. I'll just write an email. I just write a regular email. I send it to that secret email address, and it sends me back a confirmation. I say send, and then it goes out to everybody. It's a much faster way. Ideally, you want to craft your emails and do that. But if you're not sending out an email at all, you're not doing any good. So create a MailChimp account for free. Go create one of those mail through email addresses so you can just do it that way. And you can start talking about people. If you got a podcast episode, hey, everybody, new podcast episode up. Check it out. Do this. A lot of cool things. One of the features that I'm going to try to build for Author Page is I'm going to make it very easy for people to cut and paste a formatted block of text or a short story right into their email to send to people. Instead of saying, click here to read this, nope, it's in the body of your email and it looks good.
Yeah,
So,
that's great. And that's a huge tool for people.
Yep. So I think that's a great pick on Justin's behalf. So check that out. I think you guys, anybody is thinking about like, well, I don't know what I'm going to use it for. Just sign up, get an account, just start building people. I talk to authors. I'm like, what's your email list? Like, I've been thinking about starting one. How long have you been thinking about starting one? Oh, I don't know, 5 years.
Yeah, dude, that's the problem. That is the artist's fallacy. This ludicrous belief that if you build it, they will come. And maybe that happened at some point in history, but most likely anyone you could point to that and say, well, it happened to this guy. My guess is you just don't see the machinations behind it that made this stuff work. Yep. Somebody somewhere is building that platform to reach those people.
But Brian, this is my dream.
Yeah, no. Guess what? Your dream involves courting other people and making it easy for them to enjoy your stuff and making it even easier for them to throw you some bucks for it.
Exactly.
Mr. Reality. Gentlemen, it's been after.
You're goddamn right.
All right, I got to run to the restroom. I love you guys.
Peace out.
All right. Yeah, good show, everybody.
Thank you, Bryce.
We'll see you next time.
Mother led me home. She said to keep it clean. And so I went outside and soaked it in kerosene.